It's the Porkmeister here, and I'm with him, MG.
I'm Mike Graham, and we together are the two Mikes.
That's right, and we've got a podcast coming up. It's a bundle of fun, it's a barrel of laughs. Don't miss it. It is great to be here. Thank you very much indeed. And you're quite right. We've got loads to talk about over the next 3 hours, and a lot of it is instructive to our listeners.
Educational, even.
Educational, instructive, illuminating,
yes.
Enlightening. That is my mission in life here at Talk Sport.
And you're going to be conducting an experiment later on as well, aren't you?
Well, I conduct experiments all the time because in my desperate search to improve the quality of life around me, for those around me, and to help those who are struggling to see where the direction of their life is going, I feel that I have to...
In many ways, you're a bit like a guru.
I have to...
You've got a shape for it, to be fair.
I have to be tangential. And
yes.
in being tangential, I'm experimenting with life forms to help other people.
Yeah. Just so that anybody who doesn't understand what on earth Porky's talking about, I'll explain it to you. Coming up very shortly, we're going to conduct an experiment. Porky has found some kind of new life coach who suggests that by doing something different in the way that you breathe, you can actually prolong your life. Don't tell anybody about it yet, because we're going to do it very soon. All I can say is that I'm not sure. I haven't been assured of its safety. This particular experiment.
No, there's nothing wrong.
So I'm not sure whether we should have some kind of paramedic on standby in case it all goes horribly wrong.
You won't need it. It's revolutionary, believe me. It could extend a normal person's life by as much as 5 years.
That long?
Yeah, the breathing technique, which I'm going to introduce to our millions of listeners very shortly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, before you get to that, lots of people are holding their breath about Manchester City going to Goodison Park because there's been a massive debate, which you took part in very much earlier on in the week with the Alan Brazil Sports Breakfast. Andy Gray got involved, whether Everton should basically not lie down for Manchester City, but whether Everton fans should do basically Liverpool fans a favour, and if Everton make sure that they beat Manchester City in order to stop Liverpool winning, allow Manchester City to beat them in order to stop Liverpool winning the title.
Let's be absolutely fair to Andy Gray. He's a top professional footballer. He's a star at Everton. Andy never suggested for 1 minute that the Everton players would ease off. What he said was, if it goes Manchester City's way at the end of 90 minutes, some Everton fans might not be that upset at a result for once, for the first time in their lives. Yeah. And I understand what he's saying, because in a strange sort of way, I think City are going to win this game. They're certainly the favourites. The incentive for them to win is greater than the incentive for Everton to win, because Everton hopefully have secured the fifth place situation, although Spurs are breathing down the neck a bit. But,
they've thrown fourth place away, haven't they?
Well, I'm afraid so. Yeah, I'm afraid that I was at Southampton last week and it wasn't a happy situation. But the point I'm making is, Mike, that Andy wasn't saying for a moment the Everton fans will try. And I think Roberto Martinez absolutely endorsed that today. The pre-weekend presser. I mean, I'm just looking at the tomorrow morning's Daily Mirror, and it's a 2-page spread. The two inside pages at the back, the most important sports pages in the paper. It says, Liverpool can rest easy. We won't lie down for City. And this is Roberto Martinez making it absolutely clear we play to win in every game. Martinez, conspiracy, no chance. We have too much pride and too much to play for. And that's exactly the position I'm in. Yeah. Any suggestion that Everton should take their foot off the accelerator to even, half a percentage degree is sacrilegious. Sacrilegious.
Anathema, you could even say, if you wanted to. Well, let's have a listen to what Roberto Martinez actually said yesterday.
Absolutely.
That's part of the rivalry, and I understand it. I think what's more important is the integrity of our football club and what we are as a football team. And we're just trying to be as good as we can, and it's not in our makeup and it's not in our nature to throw points away and not to give everything we have in every performance. I think the history and the heritage of our club, players that they've been involved in this incredible football club, wouldn't accept that. And we've got too much to fight for. I would agree that would be a debate if you are mid-table and you've got nothing to fight for, but even then, it's not in our nature. And if that's the case, if we are helping our neighbours to achieve something, is probably better than seeing the neighbours winning something without our help.
Now, I've heard a lot of Everton fans over the course of the last week here on Talk Sports saying the complete opposite of that. They would do anything to make sure that Liverpool don't win the title.
Well, I don't understand that, Mike. You see, the thing is, does that show envy and does it show some sort of resentment towards another club?
Well, isn't it rivalry? I mean, that's the problem. When does rivalry cross over into ill feeling, I suppose?
I don't know. Look, I don't want to go beating a drum and saying, good old Liverpool, let them win the Premier League. But on the other hand, I'm not going to do anything to try and gerrymander the results in the in the Premier League in the last 2 or 3 games of the season, just so we can put the boot in on Liverpool. I just don't see it that way. I'm an Evertonian, and frankly, I don't care what happens at any other club, including the one just a mile away on the other side of Stanley Park, because I only care about Everton. And to show, a deep concern about Manchester United or Manchester City or Liverpool just shows that you're actually morally bankrupt in your own skin with your feelings about your own club, which is Everton.
You normally accuse me of being morally bankrupt.
Well, you're morally bankrupt on a lot of issues, but on football, I don't bother accusing you of that, because, frankly, you haven't got any views on football worth talking about because you're not attached to a club.
This is why I'm trying... Well, I'm attached to Brentford, as you know. What I'm trying to get at here is why people have expectations which are well over and above what they should have. I mean, I'm going to ask you in a minute what your expectations are. We've got Steve on the line from Los Angeles, California.
Great.
Who it says here is a Man United fan, but I'm pretty sure they got that wrong, Steve. Are you not a Manchester City fan?
No, I'm definitely a Man United fan.
Oh, are you? Sure. Okay. There's another Steve in LA who calls in who's a Manchester City fan.
Oh, right. Well, I don't like him.
Well, there you go. Now we were talking earlier, just before Mr. Parry came in, about how Manchester United fans seem to feel that they've got a right to be in Europe. Do you think you deserve to be in Europe?
Not on the performances of late, no. But obviously, as a Man United fan of 29 years, we don't deserve, but we definitely, as Man United, we are one of the biggest clubs in the world. So Champions League is all about what Man United is. So
yeah, Steve, I mean, what you should be saying here is you should be saying that although we don't have a God-given right to be in Europe, you should take it as read, as a Manchester United fan, that you will be in the Champions League every season because of what you've just said. You are one of the biggest clubs in the world, therefore you should be there. So what I'm saying is you've now got to put pressure on your club to say, right, we've had enough of this, exit from Europe, not good enough, get us back into the Champions League, otherwise another head is going to roll.
Oh, totally. But to go on to my next point is I don't think Van Gaal's the next, the best replacement for Moyes. And Moyes should never have been put in place in the first place. But what I would like to say is Giggsy looked absolute class against Norwich on the touchline in the suit. He looked the business. I know it's only one game, and obviously the next 3 games will show a bit more. But I think with him knowing the history, playing for the club for 20 years, the amount of stuff he's won, he could be, and he will definitely get the respect of all the players. Yeah, but he will draw big players into the club.
Problem with that is, Steve, it's like when you go out on your first date, okay? When you go out on your first date, you think that your partner is the best-looking person in the world, that it's all, roses and champagne and sweetness and light and all that, but then reality sets in. So I wouldn't
Well, you realise you're with a moose or something, is that what you're saying?
No, not with a moose. That's being unkind to a working colleague. But you understand where I'm coming from, Steve, don't you?
Yes.
I don't think he does. No, I think you've completely foxed him there.
No. Wouldn't you like Mourinho as your manager, Steve? Wouldn't you like Mourinho?
No, I wouldn't like Mourinho because he wouldn't come here with his heart in it. He is Chelsea through and through now, and obviously he wouldn't come to Man United, so he wouldn't come with the best intentions. That's not
true. That's not true. I believe if the board of Manchester United suddenly decided we're going to have Mourinho, and they sort of took a 200-mile trip down the M6, M1, talked to him, I think things could happen.
Mourinho will never, ever come to Man United now because of his second stint at Chelsea. There's just never going to happen.
Yeah, I think you're right,
crucified.
I think you're absolutely right. Steve, I agree with Steve there. I also agree with him about Ryan Giggs, because I said this to you last week, even before the Norwich game. I mean, everybody else kind of piled in after the Norwich game. Sure. Alan Hansen said it, Mark Lawrence said it, I think. I mean, they all said it after the game. Oh, yeah, why don't they just give the job to Ryan Giggs, which I said last week. Because Van Gaal, if you look at some of the stories in the papers, which we'll look at in a bit more detail later, Van Gaal's style breeds enemies, says City's Soriano. And the former Barcelona director, who's now at Manchester City, has had a real go at Van Gaal, saying basically he's not the answer for Manchester United. Yeah,
they not doubting his football credentials, but what they're saying is management style is very brusque.
Yeah.
It's very...
He's very arrogant, apparently, isn't he?
Arrogant, superiority, all this kind of stuff.
Which is exactly what they said they didn't want. Bobby Charlton said he didn't want in terms of Mourinho.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, when a guy is of that... And he's clearly a highly intelligent man. And when you get a guy like that trying to communicate, for want of a better word, with lads like Rooney, who are, boys who live on a level of communication and understanding from when they were brought up, if you understand what I'm saying, you can get problems. You can definitely get problems.
Yeah, I think there will be problems at Manchester United. Manchester United fans seem to think that they should be in the Champions League because they are Manchester United. I don't think that's a realistic expectation, certainly not for next season, but you can keep giving us a call. 08717 22 33 44. I'm Mike Graham, he's Mike Parry. Together we are the two Mikes. We've got loads more to come. Up next, The Experiment.
See you like the sun, I like the rain.
This is TalkSport Extra Time. I'm Mike Graham. He is Mike Parry. Together we are the two Mikes. We've got loads of your calls to take. Keep them coming in. 08717 22 33 44. It's a massive weekend for Premier League football, of course, and we will be talking some more about that. But right now, Mr. Mike Porky Parry is about to conduct an experiment. So if you're sitting comfortably, then I will begin. I'm not quite sure how this is going to work, but it's something called the Buteyko method.
It's not an experiment because it's well proven. The point is that, I'm of an age now and, I've got the old Dickie ticker and all that kind of stuff, and I'm looking for ways to elongate my life
you think
expectancy.
Death is approaching? Is that what you're telling me?
No. But I've said anyway. I've studied lots of methods of how it could happen. The Buteyko method is the best, and the Buteyko method is scientifically researched to prove that we actually all breathe too much. And in
breathe too much.
We breathe too much. You take too much air into your mouth and that's or through your nose, and that's got too many components in the air. And that can be, according to the Buteyko method, and I believe in it, the research says, can lead to a lot of diseases.
Right.
It can lead to a lot of the problems you get.
Well, unfortunately, if you don't breathe, you die, don't you?
No, but what you do is...
If you stop breathing in order to stop getting any diseases, you won't live very long anyway.
What I do 4 times a day now is I actually stop air, oxygen to getting into my body by closing off my nose and my ears, because air can
your ears?
Well, air can get into your body through your ears.
What?
Yes, it can.
Rubbish.
Yes, no, it can. And hey, I'll take my headphones off and show
that's
you.
Rubbish. If that was the case, then you could swim underwater.
No.
By just breathing through your ears.
No.
You're the man from Atlantis.
No. And I do this 4 times a day for a minute, right? And you'll see instantly if I do it now, and I know that we can do this visually if you want to show how it goes. I will look incredibly better and well after a minute of not breathing. Here we go. Okay?
You're going to do it? I'm going to time you then. All right.
Here we go. Right, here we go.
Now, that's breathing. Oh, he's now stopped breathing. While he does this, I suppose I should do a running commentary, because since we're on the radio, it's difficult to imagine just you watching this particular mad experiment as it's going on. I can just describe him. He's now leaning back in the chair. He's holding his nose and his ears. Why on earth he's holding his ears, I've got no idea. But he's holding his ears. He seems to be shaking his head around. He's going very red, Porky. I'm not sure this is very good for him. He's been going now for about 25 seconds, about halfway through. It looks as though the challenge is certainly going well. He's leaning further back in his chair. He's got 2 fingers across his nose, keeping his nostrils shut. His mouth mercifully is closed for the first time ever in a TalkSport studio. He now seems to be rolling around in the chair, where his head is going very red. That was only about 40 seconds, 35 seconds.
Well, that's...
You don't look any better.
I do. I feel much better. I feel great. All the toxins in my body, which are brought in by air, absolutely marvellous. Now, you say it was only 40 seconds. Yeah. That's because I've done it the wrong way around, you see, because normally I would start this first thing in the morning, but I've done this as an experiment for the programme, and that would have been my 1 minute one, working up from 40 seconds, the first one of the day. And as we're at 2:20 in the morning, I thought I'd better do the 6 a.m. one. Yeah. So that's why it's only 40 seconds.
So
but, I mean, look at me. Don't I look different?
Well, you've now, I mean, the redness has kind of gone from your face. It looks as though you've actually now returned to normal. But you didn't look as if you were enjoying that. You were sort of, you looked like you were sort of thrashing around in the chair.
Mike, what you might have seen is you might have seen me moving my head around and all that. That's because what you do is, with a body devoid of the poisons in the air that you inject into your body, you want to sort of, in turn, it's like shaking a bottle of milk. Make sure that all the best parts of not breathing are given to the best parts of your body.
Yeah, well, let me tell you this. I've been looking up this so-called Buteyko method. I'm not quite sure
why. What do you mean
so-called?
It's there. If you looked it up, it must be there.
Well, I have looked it up, and here's what it says. Members of the medical community have been sceptical of the efficacy of Buteyko due to the often exaggerated and unsubstantiated claims earlier made by Buteyko practitioners, of which I presume you were one. So it comes as no surprise to me that this so-called scientific breakthrough is actually a load of old cobblers.
Well, I'm sorry, but as usual, when you don't understand science, you mock it, OK?
It's not science.
Of course it's science.
It's a crank
I tell you what, mate, in 1650, you just said, I'm not getting on that ship and going to America. The ship will fall off the end of the world because it's not round. Here, now let me tell you what happens. Mr. Buteyko's explanation is we all breathe too much. Many of the world's worst diseases can be attributed to this.
Well, why don't you just walk around wearing an oxygen mask?
Hang on. He's medicalised because that's oxygen going into your body. It's to stop anything going in your body. He's medicalised breathing. It is a spectacular feat, OK? Now, what the Buteyko method can do, it can cure some common problems, right? It can cure the common cold. If you practice it pretty much
what do you mean if you've got a cold
each
and you
day,
hold your breath?
But what it says, it's been proven that too often when people have minor ailments, pills are prescribed to the patient, which are absolutely useless. This is a far more efficient way of looking after yourself. It's as simple as that.
Well, it's not as simple as that because I mean, you see an awful lot of people these days on the underground, for example, in London, wearing masks, right? Well, they don't want to breathe germs in.
Don't
right?
like breathing filthy air. Surely that proves my point.
Well, no, it doesn't because actually, the people who do wear those kind of masks are doing the wrong thing because it was later proven. It was and people started doing it when there was yet another one of these big epidemics started to come. Right, it was some kind of Asian flu or other, right? But if you don't wear the right kind of mask, which is one that actually filters the air, which has got a kind of hard part to it and holes in it. If you would just wear like a straight medical mask, actually you collect more germs in the medical mask than you would otherwise normally breathe in. So actually it's worse for you.
And you're regurgitating your own oxygen, which turns into CO2.
But also, when you stop, I mean, people will have heard you. When you stopped after 40 seconds, you were gulping air into your lungs in a much deeper way than you would have done if you were just breathing normally. So you've probably actually taken more rubbish into your lungs than you would have otherwise done.
I was exhaling, honestly. I was not inhaling.
Well, you can't exhale without inhaling.
Yes, you can, because I knew my lungs were full of CO2, so I don't out like get it out, you see. That's what you have to do.
Well, somebody's texted in to say, can Porky hold his breath for an hour?
Well, the obvious answer to that is, that might be dangerous. But now I've got rid of all the, the CO2. That'll keep me going for a good sort of 4 or 5 hours. I probably won't have to do it again during this show. Because
so you're seriously telling me you do this 4 times a day?
Yeah, do 4 times a day.
You have to set aside a special kind of period. Do you have to be at home? Can you do it anywhere you are?
No, I can do it driving.
You don't do it while you're driving.
I could do it while I'm... Well, I can't.
Well, how can you do it while you're driving? You were holding your nose closed and you had your fingers in your ears.
That's true. You can't... Well, my thumbs are in my ears, actually, because your thumbs are bigger and they can actually close off your ears
I don't believe this
air.
nonsense. I mean, does this guy who's from the Ukraine, by the way, he's a Ukrainian doctor, apparently.
What's wrong with the Ukraine?
Guy? Well, I mean...
Apart from the fact that they're sort of,
his name is
dispute with Russia.
Konstantin Pavlovich Buteyko, who first formulated these principles during the 1950s.
Yeah. Well, sure...
it's not exactly cutting-edge technology time, is it?
Excuse me. It was in the 1950s that people first discovered, unbelievably, it took them that long, there is a connection between smoking cigarettes and lung cancer, OK?
Really?
And, that was a theory that people mocked in those days.
Everybody knew that there was a connection. No, just that the cigarette companies kept it quiet.
No, nobody knew. Nobody knew. They all these American cigarette companies used to show adverts of people riding around on the range smoking cigarettes, even though cowboys didn't have cigarettes.
But one of the reasons...
And it was the He-Man cigarette.
But that was all a con. One of the reasons that they did that was because they knew it was harmful. But obviously they couldn't advertise the fact that it was harmful, otherwise nobody would have bought them.
Well, in that case, people now who are 80 have got lung cancer should sue the American governments of, the Kennedy era.
That's what they are doing.
And before that, who was the president before Kennedy? Eisenhower and Harry Truman. And tell them, you knew that I was killing myself. Why didn't you tell me?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm afraid I'm not convinced by this Buteyko method. I'm not going to be following down that particular road. It looks dangerous to me, and I would say to anybody out there who has listened to you doing that and is thinking of doing it themselves...
How can it be dangerous holding your breath?
Holding your breath is dangerous.
You're not holding your breath underwater, so you're not going to let water go into your lungs or anything like that.
You can swim underwater and breathe through your ears.
No, I didn't say that at all. What I said is air enters your body through your ears, into your eardrums and into your head. Everybody knows that.
It might go through your brain more quickly than anybody else.
Be dismissive.
Let's talk to Brian, who's a Manchester City fan. He's in Lancaster. Hello, Brian. Very good morning to you.
Hiya, Mike. Yeah. Good morning to you.
Don't hold your breath, whatever you do. What would you like to say?
Well, it was just a response to something you said about, the financial fair play.
Yes.
What they do with the money, or what they do as a forfeit. I was thinking maybe if the money, spending money is fine, right? If you've got a big club like City and they spend 100 million over, X figure is set, then maybe if the money went to another club that spends under, if it went to opponents, like a smaller club, like when Burnley was, say, in the Prem.
Oh, what you mean, like take it off City and give it and distribute it evenly?
Yeah, so let City spend 100 million over, wherever the bar's set. But then they have to pay penny for penny to clubs that have stayed well under,
Yeah. Brian, I can see that you're looking for social justice here.
Sounds a bit like socialism.
Yeah, this is a meritocratic approach to football, but you can't do that because, that means basically Manchester City then set the level of spending for every club in the Premier League by what they spend.
Well, I don't know if they'd set I don't know about that because I don't follow that.
Well, the other
of course they do, because if they... sorry, Mike. If they're going to spend $1 billion over what they're allowed, and then they get fined 900 million, which is then redistributed through, presumably evenly between all the other 19 Premier League clubs, who all get about $500 million each, about 500 million each. It's madness.
Well,
50 million, sorry. Yeah.
Mathematics is not a strong point. I think all that breathing in and out played havoc with his brain.
I don't think the figures would go that high, would they? But, all right, here's another way of putting it, right? If you've got a Rooney or a player on £300,000 a week, then maybe you should have to loan one of your youth players out, or a player that, instead of...
Yeah, but that doesn't stop them spending their money, Brian, which is what makes it unfair in the first place, right? All that does is it sort of overcompensates in some way. It means that there's more money swilling around, and it will just get worse and worse, won't it? Because they'll just spend more and more.
Well, I don't think they would, because, let's put it this way, is you're not going to be able to stop them spending, so why not reward and try and bring the other teams up?
Well, yeah, but you can stop them spending if you put these caps on. That's my point.
Exactly.
If they say, for example, you've got a cap on the wages that you pay your European squad next season, then they will have to pay those players that money. And if those players don't accept that money, they'll have to remove them from the squad. So that, I think, will be effective.
Well, yeah, maybe, but they never seem to, like this Barcelona thing that's just happened. Big song and dance about it. A couple of weeks later, they're cleared.
Yeah. Well, they're not cleared. They've just appealed. So until their appeal is heard, they can now do what they want.
Well, what we should do is, Brian, we should cheat like the European nations do. In Spain...
Yeah, you're good at
that. Just ignore him, Brian, ignore him. No, right. Brian, what I'm saying is, what they do is, for instance, a few years ago when Real Madrid are going to go bankrupt and all that kind of stuff, the national government, that's why they're called Royal Madrid, just decided, we'll buy your training ground. It was probably worth about £10 million, but they paid 195 million for it, and then leased it back to them and all this kind of stuff.
Well, because they couldn't let Real Madrid go bust because it's a massive Spanish kind of historical organisation.
Yeah.
I was just trying to think of ways of where, like the ground sharing, say, this big issue about the Wembley. Could they not have shared the ground?
Who with?
I don't know, West Ham, Tottenham,
You mean like the Olympic Stadium you're talking about?
Yeah.
Well, Arsenal did share it with them, didn't they? Arsenal shared it with them to play European games.
There is. The point about it, Brian,
ago.
we've got to let you go, Brian, because we've got loads to do. But, Brian, I think, is struggling to find a solution for something which needs to have a solution found. And I don't blame him for trying to.
Does it need a solution?
Well, I think it does, because if it doesn't, if it's not sorted, and I think, actually, if they do start capping the wage structures and those kinds of things, then it will eventually sort of even itself out. But there's no point in taking... I don't think there should
be any financial fair play controls whatsoever.
Why not?
Well, because if a man like Abramovich, who's made a huge success of his life and has billions, can't spend it on what he wants to spend it on, then the whole world's gone mad.
Well, there is some truth to that.
There's every truth to it.
We can keep talking about this, but we've got to go for a second. But, as I was saying earlier, Atletico Madrid have got a great chance of winning the Champions League, and they've hardly spent anything like the kind of money Real Madrid have spent, or Manchester City, or Chelsea. So when people say, these teams have just bought titles and bought trophies, it's not true, because you can't buy trophies anymore, can you?
No, you can't. I totally agree with that.
We've actually agreed on something. Maybe this Buteyko exercise has worked for Porky, because he started to talk sense. This is Talk Sport Extra Time. I'm Mike Graham. He is Mike Parry. Recognise that music, Mike? It's got a kind of slight samba feel to it.
Copacabana.
Yeah.
And that was the guy with the big nose.
Yeah.
Barry Manilow. That's him. Yeah. I met him once. I interviewed him once.
Did you?
Yeah. I interviewed him in the Les Ambassadeurs Club in London.
He's had a lot of work done, as they say, hasn't he?
Well, this was... I'm showing my age a bit now. It was about 25 years ago. And he hadn't had all the plastic stuff done, No. The nose like that, to keep that, in shape.
He'd have trouble not breathing through that for 20 seconds or so, wouldn't he?
Certainly would, yeah.
We will be talking to John Cottrell coming up in a moment, though, because it's yesterday, of course, was the 20th anniversary of the death of Ayrton Senna. Incredible story. And at Imola, they've had all sorts of memorial services, and they've been looking at the whole story over in Brazil as well. So we'll do that. But first, let's talk to David, who's in Melbourne, Australia, because he says this Buteyko method apparently cured his wife's asthma.
Yep.
According to him.
Yep.
David, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the show.
Good morning to you.
So, is this true, or are you just winding me up?
No, my wife was on 2 different kinds of inhalers, sometimes on steroids, and generally once every 6 months would have an overnight in hospital with an attack. She did the Buteyko course, and since 2 weeks after that, was doing the control pause, and also rather bizarrely taping her mouth up at night. So
that's a good idea. I like the sound of that for Porky. Taping his mouth up.
Ignore him, Dave.
Joking aside, it forces you to breathe through your nose and not be a mouth breather. So Buteyko is about over-breathing. So since 2 weeks after that, she's never used an inhaler since.
And how long was she suffering from asthma before this then?
She was late onset asthma, but it was for about 15 years, so it wasn't just a flash in the pan, if that's what you're asking.
Tell me this, Dave.
Yeah.
Tell me this, Dave. Your wife sounds like an enormously able woman. Did she have to fight the prejudice that people have to fight when they seek alternative methods of self-healing?
Well, Mike, one of the funny things about it is that they used to treat asthma by getting people to smoke, which tends to suggest that it is about too much oxygen in the blood.
Yeah.
The only other thing I will say to you, Mr. Parry, is you're doing your control pauses wrong.
What?
Don't take your control pause that you did there. You're doing it wrong. You don't take deep breaths beforehand. Just breathe normally.
He was also holding his nose, right? So from what you're saying, David, that's not what he's meant to be doing, right?
No, you just got to pause breathing. You don't start taking deep breaths, because that's going to counteract what we're talking about.
Well, in the philosophy that I'm working on, you've got to empty the lungs first, with short, deep breaths like that. Then you, as you quite rightly say, you don't suck in a lungful of air to keep you going. You just stop. And it's the stopping and not inhaling that is the goodness in this method.
All right, Mike. Well, as usual, we'll agree to disagree.
Sure.
Well, he won't take any advice from you, David, even though you've obviously known awful lot more about this technique. Does she still do it, even though the asthma's now disappeared? Are there any other benefits around it?
If she feels that she's getting short of breath at times, she'll do it. But generally speaking, now, she's running half marathons and stuff, so, it seems to be a thing of the past, and that was now nearly 10 years ago.
Wow.
This is fantastic, David, and I want to thank you very much indeed for having the courage to speak out in a world of cynicism. You are a beacon, and I've been fighting cynicism in this world for 25 years with my views on life, and it's good to know down under there, David, I have a colleague and an ally. Thank you.
That's your voice.
Thanks very much indeed. Dave's a Partick Thistle fan as well, by the way. But have a listen to this. This is another, completely and utterly neutral take on this alleged system
it's neutral, but you just found
neutral,
it.
Yeah. It says the method purportedly retrains the breathing pattern through chronic repetitive breathing exercises to correct hyperventilation. However, it says the theory is not widely supported in the medical community due to a lack of evidence supporting either the theory behind the method or that it works in practice.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And if you troll through, Wikipedia and all that kind of stuff,
I'm not talking about Wikipedia. I'm talking about
where do you find that?
I'm talking about a text that's in a journal.
Okay, okay, and
medical journal.
Okay, and you're not being selective here, Mike. There are no pieces of literature which actually support the Buteyko method, because we've got human beings who support it.
Yeah.
We've just had one on the phone, but you can't find a single piece of literature, like 6 or 7 lines, supporting the Buteyko method, which we already know from the personal testimony of a live human being in Australia is very, very helpful to people with asthma. It helped
his wife to get rid of the asthma. And I'm delighted about that. However, what he said was that it was not about sort of taking 4 times during the day and not breathing at all. You've got to tape your mouth up, which definitely appeals to me as far as you're concerned. And you've also got to breathe through your nose. It's not about holding your breath.
It's an interpretation. Christianity is an interpretation. People practice it in different ways. The Buteyko method is an interpretation based on what best suits you, okay? And what best suits me way is the method that I've already practiced. And by the way, I didn't realise that you were having somebody film that and that you are going to put it out on YouTube. But, I mean, you think you're doing it to mock me.
Not at all.
I think I'm doing it to help hundreds of thousands of people around the world who will... Well, hang on, who will see that I am prepared to go through with it, and then the testimony of one of our listeners at least, and there must be hundreds of others, is that it works.
Yeah, well, here's something from someone who is following me, somebody called Core, who sent this in on social media at TalkSport Extra Time. After you've held your breath, you breathe 5 times faster to catch your breath, so you're taking in 5 times more germs and bacteria.
No, not at
Quite
all.
right.
Not
and here's
at all.
one from somebody who doesn't give a name, who's texted this in. Never mind breathing through your ears, Porky. He said, if we could breathe through another part of your body, the ladies would love you.
Well, I'm not going to respond to that. I don't like vulgarity, and clearly that's somebody who thinks it's funny to dismiss the challenge that we should all meet and appreciate of exploring new ways of making our lives better.
All right, well, we'll leave it there for the moment. 08717 223344. If you know anything else about Buteyko, as it's called, this Ukrainian doctor's method of somehow making you live longer. And we'll talk a bit more about living longer later on in the show as well. But let's talk now to John Cottrell, who's a commentator for TV Globo. He's in Sao Paulo, down in Brazil. John, a very good morning to you.
Hello, how are you doing?
Yeah, very well indeed. Thanks for joining us at this late hour. I know the World Cup preparations are very much underway. We might ask you about those in a little while, but all sort of concentrations at the moment, both in Imola and back in Brazil, I presume as well, are on the 20th anniversary of Ayrton Senna's death.
Yeah, there's been a lot of coverage, as you'd expect, here in São Paulo in particular, and Brazil in general, about 20 years, as you said. I know that around 20,000 people turned up at Imola for a tribute to Senna, and here on his grave in the Morumbi Cemetery, which is kind of like around 10-15 minutes from where I am now. I know a lot of flowers are there, a lot of pictures are put on around his grave, and there's been a wall-to-wall coverage in the Brazilian media and seemingly around the world as well.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we saw here, I suppose, about an hour, a day or so ago, was Corinthians players wearing a replica of the helmet when they were lining up before their game against Nacional.
Yep.
I think that was maybe yesterday evening, but it was a remarkable picture.
Yeah, I posted a photo of that on my Twitter account just early on.
That may have been where I saw it, actually.
Could have been. It's the stadium where England will play against Italy.
Right.
By coincidence.
And every single one of them's wearing a replica of his helmet. I mean, it's a remarkable picture, really, isn't it?
Well, he was. Senna was a Corinthians fan, so there's a connection between Corinthians, the club, and Senna. And if you look at some of the games that Corinthians play, you'll see these big banners. You'll see these huge banners of a picture of Senna, and it will say Senna Eterno, which is like Senna forever. So there's a connection between Corinthians and the racing driver.
Now, John, I'm not sure if you're an expert on Formula One motor racing. I'm certainly not, but I have picked up on the Senna commemorations, and I need to ask you this question. Why is it the guy called Gerhard Berger, who was Senna's teammate at McLaren, can deliver us this quote? He was the best driver of all time. When, of course, the records show that he wasn't the best driver of all time, and that Michael Schumacher is the best driver of all time, and that actually Sebastian Vettel is going to be a driver more outstanding in terms of titles than this guy, Ayrton Senna. And it's all very well to say, oh yes, but he died, so it didn't give him the chance to be the best driver of all time in terms of records. Well, you could say that about Jim Clark. You could say that about half a dozen Formula One motor racing drivers who lost their lives early in their career.
I saw that quote actually. I may have misread it. I thought it was Alain Prost who said that. I may have misread it.
It was Gerhard Berger, but that's not to say that Alain Prost might have said it as well, because he was his main rival, wasn't he?
Well, Prost. Okay. Well, I think Prost said that he was okay, but Senna was a genius and Prost wasn't. Was that I said? Yeah, but of course, I think dying early in your career it has this kind of effect, doesn't it, really? People always say, the guy was the best. He died when he was 34.
Yeah,
so
but it wasn't that early. It wasn't that early. 34.
Well, you're spend the next 5 minutes giving the guy a hard time. It's supposed to be a commemoration.
Excuse me. Vettel won his first title when he was 21. So Ayrton Senna was 34. That's 13 years on. He'd already won 3 World Championships. Look, nobody's doubting he was an incredibly good driver. He was charismatic. But I just don't get this thing about he was the greatest driver of all time. And the records show that Michael Schumacher was the greatest driver of all time.
Yeah, but it was more about the way that he drove, I think, is what people are getting at. Because he was a very brave driver in a time when it was
some would say he was a reckless driver.
Well, it was a much more dangerous time
some would
to
say
drive
he was a reckless driver.
A Formula One car.
I mean, look, I don't wish to be unkind, but at the end, he died in an accident on the track.
Yeah.
I mean,
a dangerous track, which is no longer in use.
I totally agree. The wheel came off his car, ran up the bonnet of his car, and almost took his head off. But I mean, what I'm saying is he crashed, and crashing was, unfortunately, part of the reality of motor racing in those days. If you got something a tiny bit wrong. So again, I ask, where did this title, the greatest driver of all time, come from?
Well, the first thing I suggest is you don't come to Brazil for a while.
Yes.
If you do come to Brazil, don't say that to Brazilians.
Well, Porky has a habit of saying the wrong thing at the wrong time.
Oh, really?
I mean, I thought, as I said, we were going to talk to John here and talk about the way that his death was being commemorated 20 years later.
Well, we've done that.
Rather than you questioning, the idea that this guy was a fantastic
but hang on, you kept
driver.
asking John the same question. How great was Senna? How big were the celebrations? How much is Brazil jumping up and down and giving it the hula hoop about Ayrton Senna?
That's the point of the conversation.
Well, I think we should get a bit deeper into it. Should be a bit more cerebral and give John a challenge with an intelligent question like I've just given him about the greatness of Ayrton Senna.
All right, well, let me try and explain it to you in words of less than 2 syllables. John, what I would say to you, and I think hopefully you would agree with me, is that it was the style of his driving. The people, I mean, I heard earlier Asif Kapadia, who's the director of the film Senna, who was talking on TalkSport about the character of the guy. And Brazil is a very passionate country. It's a very kind of emotional country in many ways, I suppose. And when they get somebody like Ayrton Senna who represents them on a global scale, he kind of embodies the entire nation with him, doesn't he?
Well, here in Brazil, he's regarded as a national hero.
Yeah.
There's nobody who criticises Senna, nobody at all. I remember the first time I came here to Brazil, I think it was 96 or 97, probably 96. I was with a friend, a Brazilian friend in Rio, and he was telling me about the scenes in Brazil when the news came that Senna was dead, and also on the day of his funeral, a few days after, that people were crying in the streets and the cities came to a standstill, and that this Brazilian guy had never, ever seen anything like it at all in his life in Brazil.
I accept all that, and the thing is, we know perhaps on a much wider range of Brazilian passion towards sport how the Brazilians react to their football teams. When they win at World Cups, it goes on for 6 months of celebration. When they lose at World Cups, presidents get deposed. So that is not an unusual sort of emotion for Brazilian people to get wrapped up in. That's the sort of people they are. But the thing about Senna is its longevity, isn't it?
Well, let me explain something to you. I'll give you a few facts here. He won 41 Grand Prix, third on the all-time list between Michael Schumacher and Alain Prost.
So not first, then.
Hang on. He achieved 65 pole positions, a feet bettered only by Schumacher.
So not first, then.
Hold on. Whose own career was twice as long.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. But sadly, very, very sadly, Senna's career was cut short by a crash. But that's what happens to racing drivers, isn't it? As I say, Jim Clark...
Well, it doesn't happen anymore, because one of the things as well, John, that we should say is that after the death of Senna, motor racing was completely transformed and it was made into a much safer sport. And happily, John, we can confirm this, that no other fatalities from the driver's side have happened ever since.
Well, that's right, yeah. And just going back to the Senna reaction here in Brazil, I think it was around almost 250,000 people turned up to see his coffin before he was finally buried in the cemetery. So, I mean, he still holds this mystique.
There wasn't like a small bearded bloke standing at the end of the cortege, sort of asking the question, "Why is this guy being decorated as such a great driver?"
John, I'm sorry that Mr. Graham's belittling it. Let me ask you this, John, because I've been to South America and I know the way people in South America think. Is there any? Is there a lot of? Yes, I do. I do the way South American people think. What I'm going to ask you, John, is this: is there a permanent sort of guard around Ayrton Senna's last resting place, his burial place? Because of course, people in Argentina went around stealing the bodies of their heroes, didn't they? And this happens quite a lot down there.
What bodies of which heroes are you talking about?
Eva Perón's coffin was dug up in Argentina, and it was nicked. They took it. Somebody. That's true, isn't it, John?
That I'm not really quite sure about, to be honest.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think there's a permanent guard around Senna's cemetery. I'm fairly sure there isn't, because it's a famous cemetery.
Yeah.
It's a huge place, of course, and it's not that far from my house. But as far as I'm aware, there's no permanent guard. There will be kind of security people around the cemetery itself, but especially for the Senna, I don't think so. It's possible, but I don't think so. I don't think anyone would touch it, to be honest. I don't think anyone would dream about
it's held in too much
doing
reverence,
anything.
I would imagine. John, listen, thank you very much indeed. I'm terribly sorry that Mr. Parry decided to ask you some rather inappropriate questions.
No, they weren't inappropriate. These questions
indeed.
have to be asked. But John, thank you very much indeed.
These questions do not have to be asked. This is a moment for reverence. It's a moment for celebration
But
and
I am
commemoration.
reverent about him. I've said it.
You just said what's so good about Ayrton Senna, effectively.
I didn't. What I said.
You did.
What I said is I don't understand when people say the greatest driver ever when the records show that he wasn't the greatest driver ever.
But it's not the right time to be saying that.
Well, I'm sorry, it is. It's 20 years on. It's not like it was 20 minutes ago when the poor chap died in his car.
You accuse me of having no compassion. I mean, really, that
on
is
the
absolute
Eva
limit.
Perón thing, by the way, her body was dug up. It was stolen. The coffin was stolen. I think it was taken to Spain. They took it off to Spain.
Was it?
It was, yeah. But then became a battle of intergovernmental, legal bidding. Like it was taken back. It was taken back to a cemetery in the middle of Buenos Aires, which I've been to, a beautiful big cemetery, and it was then buried below 50 feet of concrete.
Oh, really?
So that nobody can steal it again.
So it was a sort of a deliberate attempt to do it.
Absolutely.
Fascinating stuff.
I
Mike
thought I'd let
Porky
you know
Parry,
that.
the most inappropriate man. Don't ever invite him to a funeral, please, under any circumstances. This is Talk Sport with the two mics. Loads
Except
more
my own.
coming next. Talk Sport Extra Time. I'm Mike Graham. He is Mike Porky Parry. We've got a great text in here from a tweet, I should say. Peter says, Porky's non-breathing has affected his brain. He said £900 million split equally between another 19 clubs. It's £500 million each.
No, I then corrected it. I corrected it and said 50,000.
Yeah, that's probably not right either. Now, some of our younger listeners might not recognise this, but it is, of course, the theme tune to Dallas.
It is, yeah.
One of the great soap operas of the 80s. And there's a reason why I'm playing you this song, which you may not be aware of. When I spoke to you the other night, I think it was during the Real Madrid semi-final second leg against Bayern Munich in the Allianz Arena.
Yes.
Right, as we were talking, and I said to you, are you watching the game? And I couldn't hear any sound in the background of commentating or anything like that.
I was watching the game.
I was watching the game.
Yeah.
But suddenly I heard, that song, that sound
that's
coming
right.
out of the other side of the telephone. So I can only assume that either you were playing the Dallas theme tune in the background on one of your LPs, one of your long-playing records, or you were actually watching Dallas instead of watching the football.
No, I've got two. All our regular listeners know that I've got two screens in my lounge, okay, and so I can watch two programs at once.
Well, you got the TV on a trolley, right?
No,
the one that you used to wheel into the bathroom.
No, I don't have to do that anymore. I've got one fixed on the wall there. Now.
Right.
But one.
So why have you got two?
Well, because I like to watch two programs at the same time.
So what? One's fixed on the wall. Where's the other one?
No. They're both next to each other in the corner of the room, sort of at a 90-degree angle to each other. You know what I mean?
All right.
So I can see what's going on.
So you have them both on at the same time?
Yes, I do. Yeah. And at the time you rang,
isn't it?
no, at the time you rang, I'd put the sound down on the football for a moment to take your call.
Yeah.
But as I took your call, the other one, which was showing Dallas, because Dallas is now repeated every night at 7 o'clock on CBS, sprung into life. So
why
that's
are you watching Dallas?
Because the man I most admire in my lifetime of his values and the way he runs his life is J.R. Ewing, without a shadow of a doubt. No, it's true. He's
a fictitious character.
I know he is. But where it came from was I was doing one of hang on. I was doing one of these. I don't know what you're laughing at.
Well, because it's so ridiculous.
I was doing one of these quizzes for a magazine, and ask you,
one of these journalists whose names you never remember.
No. It's like, what was your favourite film?
Yeah.
And it said which individual has most influenced your life. So I said J.R. Ewing, and the guy said, but he's not real. I said, well, I don't care. I said that the way...
Well, how has he influenced your life?
Well, because I think his values that, the family...
a vile, treacherous, murdering scum type person?
No, the fact that his family always came first, he looked after the business...
He did not.
Yes, he did.
He was always stabbing him in the back.
No. He looked after the business that his father founded and kept it going, for 20 years in the face of all sorts of adversity and all that. The fact that he made himself incredibly wealthy and therefore was able to help all sorts of charities and all that kind of stuff.
He was a bad guy.
No, he wasn't a bad guy. No, this is a myth. It's a total myth. J.R. Ewing was a great guy. Believe me, if we all lived our life along his principles and in his style, the world would be a better place.
Maybe somebody will shoot you.
Well, you think that's funny, do you? Think that's funny to
Have you got to that bit yet, by the way? Who shot him?
Yeah, I've seen all that. I've seen it all before.
Why would you watch it again?
Well, because I do like the way he conducts his life and the way he...
Well, can you name one thing that he's done then that you say would be the pinnacle of his achievement?
Well, for instance, he has created a family unit which is immensely powerful and wealthy. That means that he has influence on what happens and what he does.
So's the Queen.
He's
done that as well.
He's kind to people. And,
he's not kind to people. He has people murdered.
No, that's completely untrue. And for you to make jokes about, I hope you get shot, Porky, is so tasteless.
I didn't say that.
Yes, you did.
No, that's not what I said. I said maybe you'll get shot.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe somebody will shoot you.
I think there was a bit of sort of hope in that expression.
Well, once again, you're assuming something that isn't necessarily the case.
But anyway, look, you may mock it. I don't care if you do or not. What I'm saying is, OK, he might be a fictional character, but as far as I'm concerned, I think that the principles of his life apply to mine, and therefore we are brothers in arms when it comes to how you lead your life.
I think it's a very, very strange thing to be doing. I wonder what TV show you'll be watching next.
Well, I watch lots of... by the way, do you understand the show Pointless? Because every night before I watch the 6 o'clock BBC News, you see the last 5 minutes. Well, I don't. I have no idea how it works. No idea whatsoever. Where you've actually got to answer questions and
you've got to guess
points.
Something that nobody guessed. That's what you've got to do.
I just don't understand it. I don't understand it.
You'd be good at it. You're pretty pointless. This is Talk Sports Extra Time, and of course, Mike Parry is here with us. We are the two Mikes. We're here for 3 hours. We're going to try and make some sense of some of the stuff you said in the last hour, I have to say. Mm-hmm. And here's one from Hazard, who calls himself Hazard because he's a Chelsea fan. He says, Senna is the greatest ever. Stats are not everything. Just ask Pep Guardiola. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's the point about Ayrton Senna, because in the end, people did absolutely believe in this guy's genius. He was a genius of the motor racing world.
And I'm not knocking that. All I'm saying is that the records don't show that he is the greatest ever driver. Let me make a point which Michael Devereux has tweeted me about. Thank you, Michael. It says to you, Mike, to old MG, tell that plank, that's me, Mike Parry, that Ayrton Senna died when the steering column of his car collapsed and not due to reckless driving. Now, listen, Michael, I'm very grateful to you for making that clear. Thank you very much indeed. I didn't suggest for a moment he died from reckless driving. I said that, as a very great driver, you live or die in those days.
You live on the edge, yeah.
Yeah, you're on the edge of, a quarter of an inch on a curb or something like that. And I said, in the end, the poor chap's Ayrton Senna lost his life in a crash. Now, you're telling me that it was the steering column of his car that collapsed, not due to reckless driving. We've had a look at that in the records, and in fact, there's an ongoing debate and investigation over the years about who was responsible for the car crash in which Ayrton Senna lost his life. And I think there was suing and counter-suing and all sorts of things. I think it's still going on to this day because, of course, it was a Williams car, wasn't it, which was the team controlled by Sir Frank Williams. Yeah. And I think they fought remorselessly against the allegation that there was anything wrong with the car. But anyway, that's the situation. I wasn't casting aspersions on Ayrton Senna's ability to drive. I'm saying that driving a Formula One motor racing car at that sort of speed in those sort of days produced a high risk probability of you sometimes having a crash.
Well, one of the things that has been also kind of brought up over this week as well has been the death of Roland Ratzenberger, who was an Austrian driver who died the day before.
That's right, in practice,
wasn't
it?
Because he was in practice, and in many ways... Is that your phone making?
No, sorry, I don't know what that was.
Put it on silent.
I've just done that.
You just put it on silent. There's strange noises coming out of it. Let's talk to Neil, who's a Liverpool fan. He's in Miami, Florida. Neil, a very good morning to you.
Good morning to you. How are we doing this evening?
We're doing very well indeed. What are you doing in Florida?
Oh, just hanging out. It's just after 10 here, and I was watching a movie and listening to you guys. And I wanted to recount a story from a BBC TV documentary that was on in 1993.
Yeah, go on.
And it was called The Team, A Year with McLaren.
Mm-hmm.
And it was sadly a year before Senna died, but there was one particular scene in this, and this, I think, shows what a great, not just racing driver, but a complete sportsman that he was. That during a practice session, he brought the car back into the pits and said, the engine's not right. And the telemetry said, well, it is. And he said, no, it isn't. It doesn't sound right. There was a big argument with Ron Dennis, who was the owner, now is still the owner and team manager. Anyway, Senna said, you got to change the engine or I'm not going to drive it. So they replaced the engine at a massive cost at that time. And Senna went on, raced, qualified, practiced, finished the race. Don't remember where he finished, but the end of the story is that when they got the engine back to the factory, they tore it apart and found out that there was a hairline crack in one of the cylinders.
Mm.
And it wouldn't have been able to pick up on any computer or anything. But out of all the cylinders, Senna knew that there was something wrong. Mm. And if he'd have qualified and raced with that engine, it just would have exploded.
Mm.
So
and he was also, he was also terribly upset that particular weekend in Imola because of the death of Ratzenberger as well. And he was very emotional about it, wasn't he?
He was, absolutely. I lived in Austria for a while. I've met Gerhard Berger several times, and I'd worked in the village that he lived in. But the aura of Ratzenberger fell very, very deeply over Austria, and especially Gerhard Berger as well. They were both Austrian. Berger's family own a massive haulage company over Austria. But Ratzenberger's family owned a car dealership not far from where I used to work. And there was a huge cloud over Austria at that time. And everybody says Senna was revered and celebrated in Brazil. Ratzenberger gets completely forgotten in this whole scenario.
This is a shame. Neil, you're clearly an advocate of Formula One motor racing. What is your understanding of where the blame factor got to after the crash? You know, I've had a tweet here from a Formula One fan saying, well, it was his steering column that collapsed. But as I remember it is 20 years ago, there was a very, very big debate about what went wrong with the car. Has that been resolved yet, do you know?
I think it's been resolved to the extent that Frank Williams is actually allowed back into Italy, because there was a point where he wasn't allowed back in Italy because he would have been indicted on murder charges. What actually happened was that there was a weld in the steering column, and the angle that the car hit the wall at Tamburello was such that the weld sheared and pierced his helmet.
I see.
Now, so Italian law is very different to the rest of the world law, if I can put that politically correctly.
Sure.
As we can see with whoever it is in America who's supposed to have killed their boyfriend or whatever. But whenever anybody dies, you can bring effectively murder or manslaughter charges against people. So there was a long period of time that Frank Williams was not allowed, or Patrick Head, into Italy because they would have been indicted on murder charges.
That's amazing.
That seems to have been sorted out now. Neil, thanks very much indeed for your call. It's a fascinating story.
It's fascinating.
Have you seen the Senna film, by the way?
No, I
was
haven't.
Talking about earlier. It's an amazing film.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
Is it real footage or is it actors?
Yeah, they use real footage as well. But that's how cleverly it's done.
I see,
it's kind of interspersed with real footage.
Look, just to pick on what Steve said there, I got the tweet saying Senna's car crashed because of the collapsed steering column. But Steve, it seems to know what he's talking about.
Neil,
says,
his name is.
Sorry, Neil. I beg your pardon, Neil. Sorry, Liverpool fan in Miami. Neil says the car hit the wall first, and it was the collision with the wall which snapped the steering column, which then knocked his helmet off or whatever, tragically. So, look, I'm not trying to prove a point here that, well, Senna made a mistake. I don't know if he made a mistake or not. All I'm saying is it was a very, very high-risk sport in those days.
Oh, it very much was. Absolutely right. Now, we've got another caller here, the real Steve in Los Angeles, who I thought was calling earlier on, but he was called Steve,
here we go.
a Man United fan. You see, that was why I called him a Manchester City fan, because this is a Steve that I talk to on a pretty regular basis.
Okay.
Steve, very good morning to you.
Good morning. I like that. The real Steve. I like that, guys.
Well, realer. Put it that way.
Well, I mean, I thought I was being foxed. You see, because the only Steve I know in LA is you. And when I see another Steve who's a Manchester United supporter, I thought it was just a mistake. You see. But little did I know we've got the A-team behind the glass tonight, so they're not making any mistakes. It's extraordinary.
Now, Steve,
for everything.
Now, Steve, you're a City fan. Now, you're lucky that tonight I'm here, because in the past, of course, you've had to deal with old Mike on his old MG, with his rather worn-out theories on supporting football clubs. So, Steve, I can just assure you, as an Everton fan, that we will be doing our damnedest to try and beat you on Saturday evening, 5:30 kick-off. Doing our damnedest because we want to win the points. We have our dignity, our self-respect, and our will to win. So any fears from anybody else that we're going to ease up and let you trample all over us are completely unfounded.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I don't even know where the argument comes from. There isn't a City fan in the world that thinks that Everton are going to fall over themselves and just let us win. So, I agree with you 100%. And I think that it's going to be a very tough game. I mean, you guys are a very, very good team. We always have trouble with you at Goodison, always. We haven't got the history behind us to show the amount of results, that make me excited. It's a frightening run-in. But the one difference between us and the Liverpool fans is that last week, I don't know about you guys, but I went crazy hearing call after call from pundits and people eulogising Liverpool and how they were going to walk the league, how they were going to run over Chelsea. And, City fans at the moment, we're very nervous. We're a bit confident. We're not shouting. We're not saying we're going to win the league. You guys, Everton is definitely our biggest hurdle. There's no doubt about that.
Absolutely. And by the way, I think you'll probably win the game. Not because Everton are anyway going to ease off, but look at the incentive your players have got. Look how many good players you've got who would love to be able to add an English Premier League title to, what a lot of them have already won.
Yeah, you're right. And also, don't forget, you've had one of our best players all year, Gareth Barrett.
Well, I was going to ask you about that, Steve, because Roberto Martinez says that, and some people agree with him, that we should get rid of this rule in English football where you can't play low knees against their sort of the club that owns them, as it were. And Martinez maybe has a point. Do you think Gareth Barrett should be allowed to play?
Well, I like Martinez, but I think he should really keep quiet on this subject, because if he goes down this path much longer, every single club is not going to loan him out players.
Why?
Because if he feels so... Because, Gareth Barry is a great player. He's just... if he stayed in City this year, he would have just been outside the top 16. So he wouldn't have got much match play, but he's a world-class player, even still at his age.
But the thing is, Steve, he's not going back. He's not going back to City, is he?
No, I know he's not. I know. No, he's not.
So therefore, he's not a City player anymore, really, in effect.
Well, I agree. Then Everton should buy him, and that will be the end of the problem. But Everton could have turned it from a loan into a permanent deal at Christmas, but they chose not to. So those were the terms of the lease agreement.
Well, because it suits them better, presumably, to have him on loans. It doesn't cost as much money.
Of course. And Martinez has done a great job, but let's not forget, and I'm sure everybody knows this, it's on the back of 4 or 5 really, really good loanees, like Lukaku, like Barry,
but I mean, I'm not accepting any criticism of Martinez on that. That is the way the system is set up, to the benefit.
No, I agree.
The benefit of the big, powerful, rich clubs to offload players. Why shouldn't Everton take advantage?
So they can buy more players than they need.
Yeah, and by the way, Steve, let me tell you this: when you say players won't be loaned to Everton, the players who are loaned to Everton, their clubs, so that's Chelsea, Manchester City and Barcelona, are absolutely delighted at the way their players have been used, i.e.
What's the name of the guy you got from Barcelona? Barcelona?
Deulofeu. And
Deulofeu.
And just ignore him, Steve. Ignore the bloated balloon on my left in the studio. What I'm saying is, Steve, Deulofeu, right, has done so well. What are you sniggering at?
It's not
I'll sort you out in a minute.
We have Martinez saying it, actually. We'll get it out for you.
Deulofeu has done so well that Barcelona have already told Everton, we like so much the way you've used our young player, the way you've played him, you've started him, you've progressed him, he's become better, that even if we take him back at the end of this season, that hasn't been decided yet.
He might become the manager the way things go at Barcelona.
No, even though. Sorry, Steve. I'm sorry about this interruption again. I'm sorry I got this, jabbering,
Let's
thing
get on with it.
What I'm saying is, even if Deulofeu goes back, there's another half dozen like him in the Barcelona Academy, the Barcelona
with slightly easier pronounceable names.
Barcelona Academy, who will come to Goodison Park, who could come to Goodison Park and play in his place.
But there's one thing you're conveniently forgetting here amongst this great argument, that every loan player that you guys have got, their home team or the parent club, whatever you call them, is still paying the majority of their wages.
Of course they are.
Now, you say of course they are. But, I mean, if Martinez says, hey, you know what, let City pay Gareth Barry's wages and we're going to play him against you, I think that's an argument one too many. Now, if they agreed on the terms of the lease that Barry could play, then you're in the right standing. But at the moment, you're not in the right standing, and neither is Martinez. And I like him. He's a good guy. Yeah. I just think on this point, he's got it wrong, And I like Everton. I really do. I wish they finished above Arsenal. I think they played brilliantly this year. But we've got a tough run in, and I'll say this. Although I am worried about Everton, it would just be like City to go to Goodison and actually win, and then get stuck against someone like Villa or West Ham.
Yeah,
I could see that
happening. But let me tell you something else, Steve, as well. I've got serious reservations about Liverpool taking 3 points off Crystal Palace, and that happens on Monday night, as you know.
Me too, and I never thought I'd say this ever. But at this point, I want Chelsea. If City don't win it, I prefer Chelsea to win it because of all the way these Liverpool pundits have been, just suggesting that Liverpool are the greatest team ever and they deserve it, and Steven Gerrard deserves it. I mean, that's hokum. Who says Steven Gerrard deserves to win the league more than anybody else?
Yeah, I know. Suddenly it gets very romantic at the end of the season, which is unusual. But Steve, we've got to run. Thanks very much indeed for your call, Steve, the Man City fan there from Los Angeles, as opposed to the Man United fan from Los Angeles. How bizarre to have two Steves in Los Angeles who both support teams from Manchester.
Well, Los Angeles is quite a big place, actually.
But what are the chances of that happening, though? Well, I know it's a big place. I've been there many times.
I'd say the chances are very small.
When was the last time you were in LA?
Last time I was in LA was it was about 2 years ago. I did Ricky Hatton fight in Las Vegas, and we went to LA afterwards.
Oh, by the way, I saw a line from Gareth A. Davis on Twitter that Ricky Hatton's been refused entry to the US. I don't know if that's true.
No, he's been refused access to get on the plane because he didn't bother getting a visa before he got on.
That wasn't very
So,
bright,
I mean, you know all about that. You don't get a visa, you don't get on the plane, do you?
No, of course. Yeah. This is TalkSport Extra Time. He's Mike Parry. I'm Mike Graham with the two mics. Loads more next.
Millions of people living as ho-ho-hos.
This is TalkSport Extra Time. I'm Mike Graham. He is Mike Porky Parry. Together we are the two mics. There will be a podcast coming out a little bit later on this morning, of course.
How long is that going to be?
I don't know how long it's going to be, because last week they put out the whole show, basically. About
great.
2 hours and 8 minutes or so.
Excellent.
Once you take all the adverts and everything else. So hopefully it might be the same
length. And that was very warmly received.
It was, actually, because people have been asking, can you not do the whole show?
Yeah.
Because we do one on Monday night, it goes out on Tuesday, which is 45 minutes, and we do another one, obviously, from this show. So we'll see. I'll have to talk to the powers that be in the morning.
Well, I finish an hour sooner than you, Mike, so instead of going off and wasting my time, in doing things like early morning drinking or something like that.
What about feeding the ducks
I've got to get down and see them, but I'll go and see the techie division on the way out and see if we can get that sorted.
Well, let's hope they get in early. Cav says this. He said, I just woke up from a slumber and I heard Mike Parry say 50 feet of concrete. Please tell me the two things are connected. That was when you were talking about Eva Peron, of course.
That's absolutely true.
Now, I've got something I want to play out to you, because there's been a couple of things that have happened this week, which it's talking about cementing.
If I can help you understand things, Mike, I'm very happy to do so.
Well, just to cement, if you'll pardon the pun, the relationship that you and I have, and to make sure that people are not in any way confused about, which one of us is the intelligent one and which one is the slightly less intelligent one. Have a listen to this from your weekly appearance on the Alan Brazil Sports Breakfast with Alan Brazil and David Ginola.
No. I don't think I'm stupido. What's French for stupid?
Stupid.
El stupid. Yeah, well, I'm not El stupid.
Stupid.
No,
What school did you go to? King's what?
King's School,
Stupid,
Chester.
Monsieur Paris.
Now, I believe he called you stupid Monsieur Parry.
No, he didn't.
Would you like to hear that again?
No, he didn't.
What?
He didn't.
Stupid,
School
Monsieur
Chester.
Paris.
Stupid Monsieur Parry.
No.
Now, by contrast, have a listen to this that happened the other night here.
I'm going to massage your ego. I think you're the most intelligent presenter on Talk Sport.
That's very kind of you, Harry. Thank you.
And I listened to some dross during the day, I've got to say.
Well, don't tell them that. Now, it's very obvious. David Ginola has just called you stupid.
One caller
Well,
out
hang
of
on.
3 or 4 million.
David Ginola, international
listeners.
footballer, film star, model, name it, he's done it,
Yeah.
He regarded you as a bit stupid.
No, he didn't.
And whereas the completely opposite side of the coin is one of the callers to the show the other night just said to me, he thinks I'm the most intelligent presenter on the station.
Hang on. First of all...
So how do you put those two things together?
First of all, the guy who called you the most intelligent, right, he's one of our listeners, and we've got 3 or 4 million of them, and we value every one of them individually.
Absolutely.
But the opinion of one against the other, 3,999,000 who probably think you're a thickhead...
Well, I don't think that's true at all.
It seems a bit of a coincidence that you seem...
There's no evidence to suggest that.
You just seem to get them on the phone. As for David did not call me stupid or stupide. I asked him, what is the French word for stupid? He said stupide.
Right.
And then
he said, stupid Monsieur Parry.
Yeah,
you were talking
hang on,
over him.
and I said, oh, stupid. He said, stupid, Mr. Parry.
Oh, you see. So you think there's some punctuation in
Of course
between the
there
words
is.
stupid and Mr. Parry?
Comma, Mr. Parry. I.e., if I'd asked him a question, what is the French for the number 9, it would have been 9, Monsieur Parry. Do you understand what I mean?
Or maybe he'd have been saying enough, Mr. Parry.
He's not calling me 9, is he? He's not calling me 9, Mr. Parry. He's not saying I'm 9. And or 9 years of age or anything like that.
Right.
I've asked him a question for a French translation.
Maybe we should listen to some of the other things he called you, because we've got him, I think, calling you sophisticated and intelligent at some point or other, so maybe he didn't mean that either.
We're talking about intelligent, sophisticated people.
Yes, like me.
Like you.
Yes,
like you and me.
Thank you very much.
He's obviously completely bowled over by the irony of his words. He does not mean that you're sophisticated and intelligent. He means quite the opposite.
Play it again and we'll examine it.
Have it again.
I think you're the most intelligent presenter on Talk Sport.
Thank you very much indeed.
No, I didn't mean
Case
that.
proven.
Excuse me.
Case closed.
I wanted us to play again. David, my friend David, explaining that I'm sophisticated and intelligent.
We're talking about intelligent, sophisticated people.
Yes, like me.
Like you.
Yes,
like you and me.
Thank you.
Even you didn't believe it.
Of course I believed it. And
What
what's
do you
more...
think the definition of sophisticated actually is?
Well,
what makes you think that you're sophisticated?
Because I'm a cut above the non-sophisticated.
Really?
Yeah, if you see what I mean.
I
you
see.
know?
Well,
yeah.
I'm completely convinced.
Normally
a sophisticated... I mean, David Ginola is the epitome of sophistication, right?
Well, that's why I call him Sophisticat David.
Yeah, I mean, he dresses very beautifully. He always looks great. First thing in the morning. I mean, the contrast between him and Mr. Brazil.
Have you got a man crush on this boy?
I think I may have, yeah. I think the guy's incredible.
Can we mark
this?
He's
very friendly.
This is, old MG's admitting.
No.
Yeah.
No, it's not that. It's not. No, absolute rubbish. No, I'm just. Why is it not possible for me to compliment David Ginola on the fact that he is an incredibly attractive looking and very smart guy? He speaks English very well. I mean, better than you speak French. I mean, there is nothing that you
But you don't need to speak French.
Less
you don't need to speak French. With the greatest respect to the French nation, you don't need to speak French.
No, but I mean,
you
don't speak any other languages. He probably speaks Spanish, French.
When you speak English, you're covering 2/3 of the globe anyway. So you don't.
I don't think so.
Yes, you are. You don't need to speak any other language. I mean, look, it's nice to have another
but it doesn't
language.
make you sophisticated.
And if you were in America, it might be wise these days to learn Spanish, because I think 1/3 of America's going to be Hispanic in like 20 years' time or something like that. And similarly, if you want to enter into business in this country, maybe good to speak Mandarin. But I can't see a reason for speaking French.
You've read that somewhere, haven't you?
Because most people in France...
All I'm saying...
If they're in business or if they're in society, speak English.
All I'm saying is that to compare yourself to David Ginola in any way, shape or form is a complete nonsense.
I don't.
Just be quiet for a second. Let's talk to Davey, who's a Hearts fan up in Edinburgh, to see what he thinks. Davey, very good morning to you. Welcome.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are we doing?
Very well indeed. Yeah. What do you make of this sophisticate sitting next to me?
Well, I've just said to your researcher on the phone there that maybe he could have played a trail, because I spoke to you a few weeks ago on a different subject about future England managers and such.
Yes.
And I made the point that I felt that Mr. Michael Graham was a very intelligent and well-educated man.
Sorry, did you call him a legend?
He did have a fair bit of culture behind him, which makes him pretty much a great listen to on the radio. Now, not detracting from yourself, Mr. Parry, who I feel is broadcasting aristocracy.
Thank you, I like that.
I do believe that Mr. Graham has the versatility to provide an excellent show on all subjects, as I've listened to him previously when he done the Independent Republic at the weekends.
Very true. Whereas Porky's more of a sort of a laugh-a-minute kind of a sidekick type of guy. Is that what you mean?
Well, listen, Mike, listen. I know the guy's sitting there listening, and so I've got to be honest and say some of his ideas and some of his conversational points are a wee bit madcap at times, but I think it takes guts and a wee bit of genius to come out with some of the things that he does come out with.
I'm sorry, I'm only expressing in public and, expansively through my voice the things that I'm thinking in my head, Davey. I mean, for instance, if you and I...
It's all like oxygen going through his ears, Davey.
Hang on, if you and I took a little test on maybe William Shakespeare and the works of...
You'd be better off doing one on William Shatner.
When I got 80% of it right last week, then perhaps, David, we'd sort out...
Yeah, when he cheated,
Excuse me.
When he cheated.
Excuse me.
We found the book in the drawer.
Excuse me. Who is the sophisticat, Davy, between yourself and myself, huh?
Oh, Mr. Parry, you have more worldly experience than I do.
Thank you.
And I do believe that you would outclass me in this particular position.
Thank you very much indeed.
I do enjoy listening to yourself on the radio because you provide instant entertainment.
That's very kind. I mean, I, for instance, know more about William Wallace than you do. William Wallace wasn't this great Scottish hero. William Wallace was a sheep thief.
Go too far now.
No, you're right. You're right. William Wallace was actually an Australian actor who actually played 4 different Lethal Weapon movies. 5, possibly.
Yeah, absolutely true. That's absolutely true.
Quite right.
And as for being a hero, who crushed the English, I don't think so. Longshanks looks after him.
Davey, once again, I can't thank you enough for calling in and giving us the benefit of your great perspicacity all the way from Edinburgh.
Listening to the two of you is like the perfect foil. We have the balance of great incisive conversation and also the instant entertainment and humour with you.
Well, that's very kind of you, Davey. Thank you very much indeed.
It's getting a bit embarrassing now. I'm going to have to stop that. But I think the verdict is pretty clear. You're not sophisticated. You are not in any way intelligent. In fact, to be honest, I think I'm going to just tape the rest of your mouth up and you can breathe through your nose for the rest of the show and it'll be better for us. This is the Two Mics. We've got loads more coming up. This is TalkSport Extra Time. I'm Mike Graham. He is Mike Parry. Together we are the Two Mics. We've been talking about a great many things, Mike. We've got many more things to talk about. So I'd quite like to talk about Jeremy Paxman with you coming up in a little while.
Okay,
Jeremy Paxman's decided to retire from Newsnight, and he says it's because he wants to get more sleep. Yeah. As soon as I saw that, I thought, he's got a bit of a cheek, hasn't he? I mean, this is a guy whose show ends before we even start working.
We're sort of getting up as he's finishing Newsnight.
But finding the right balance of sleep and waking hours when you're working these kind of nights.
But also, the other thing about Jeremy Paxman is he's totally immune to audience numbers. Now, here in the world of commercial radio, we live or die by by audience numbers. We have to because people want to pay to advertise on TalkSport. They want to know loads of people listening. But Newsnight, I mean, the figures, and correct me if I'm wrong, have been dwindling for the last 20 years.
I think they have.
Figures are 500,000, something like that.
I'm not sure exactly what they are. I should probably look that up. But certainly they've suffered over the years, not least because of all that scandal around the McAlpin thing.
Well, not only that, but I mean,
it's and all sorts of other things.
It's a very select sort of audience now that tune into Newsnight and want to watch it because, in fairness, there is so much television around now these days. Compared to...
when somebody like you's watching Dallas, all the reruns of Dallas, why on earth would you watch Newsnight?
Well, I prefer Dallas to watching Paxman on Newsnight, believe me. But what I'm saying is, Newsnight, when it launched, was a sort of, a high-level, current affairs programme. There wasn't much else around. Yeah. Now, of course, there's tons of other stuff around, which most people find more interesting.
Yeah, no, of course. Now, we're going to talk to Lee Sutherland in a moment, who's a good friend of the station, good friend of the show. He's an Everton fan down in Australia. Just before that, let's just run through a couple of the back page headlines. Because there's some good stories on the back page. It's not just about Everton and Manchester City. Jose bags £32 million Costa, is what it says on the back of the Sun. World exclusive. They say that Costa to Chelsea is a done deal, which will certainly cheer up some of the Chelsea fans who
what happens if they win the Champions League?
Yeah, well, I think they might. They've beaten Real Madrid already once this season.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I'm saying. So then does he leave the European champions to go and join Chelsea?
You know, I think he might do, because in the end, Atletico Madrid are a selling club. As much as, much as they've had a great campaign and they've had a great year, at the end of the day, they keep selling their players on, don't they? I mean, Fernando Torres came from there. All sorts of people came from there.
He did. Shall I have a look at the back of the Mail here?
Yeah, go on.
It says it's Van United, but will Giggs and co stay under new boss Louis? It says Louis van Gaal is set to be confirmed as Manchester United's manager on Wednesday and will bring his extensive Dutch backroom staff with him to Old Trafford. The 62-year-old will be joined at United by former Holland striker Patrick Kluivert. He was a handful when he was a player, wasn't he?
He was, wasn't he?
Yeah, he had certain issues. Goalkeeping coach Frans Hock, fitness coach Jos van Gijk, and analyst Max Riekers. However, the arrival means the club's famous class of 92 face uncertain futures. Roles for interim manager Ryan Giggs and coaches Nicky Butt, Paul Scholes and Phil Neville up in the air. Hasn't Ryan Giggs already said, or am I imagining this, that he didn't really fancy an assistant role?
No, he did say that. I don't think he said he didn't fancy an assistant role. All I knew he said was he didn't want the role full-time and he was only going to do it for the last 4 games of the season.
Oh, no. I don't think he's ruled himself out as the long-term manager. I think he's expressed doubts about his ability now to work with another senior manager in a reduced capacity.
Well, certainly earlier in the week, it looked as though the Van Gaal deal was off because they weren't going to be able to actually get an agreement on where Ryan Giggs fits into the whole scheme of things.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what I mean. So that could cause trouble. And the other thing that's going to cause trouble is this back page of the Times. Van Gaal's style breeds enemies, says Manchester City's Soriano, and he's the former Barcelona director, who basically says that he's got an autocratic approach. He breeds enemies who will be out to kill you when results take a turn for the worse.
Interesting that, because I'm looking at the same story here in the Mail. Ian Ladyman's written it. He's the top Northern guy for Northern football correspondent of the Mail, and the way he interprets it is this: Manchester City chief executive Ferran Soriano has sparked a potential row with neighbouring United after claiming their prospective new coach Louis van Gaal has a habit of turning players against him. Now, that's quite a serious charge. United are on the verge of agreeing terms with the Dutch veteran Van Gaal and hope to confirm him as the long-term replacement for David Moyes next Wednesday. They've actually named a date. They say it's all going to happen next Wednesday. So,
it looks very much like a done deal. You're going to have a field day with all these Dutch names, aren't you? You're breaking into your Steve McLaren voice.
Patrick Kluivert, I'm giving you profiles now, the guys you might bring with him, OK? 37, legendary Holland striker, shot to fame, member of Van Gaal's European Cup-winning side. But what's up here?
Because you're going to start going mad with all these Dutch pronunciations.
It's Van Gaal.
Van Gaal.
No, it's Van...
G is pronounced with an H.
No, yeah, but you ignore the G. It's Van Gaal. Believe me, I've spoken to my friends in Holland.
Really?
Anyway, member of the team, Ajax won in 1995, scored the winning goal against AC Milan in the final, and he was only 18 at the time, so he's a bit of a legend, isn't he?
He really is.
And then Os van Dijk, he's the physio. He's 57. He works everywhere. Frans Hock, who is the goalkeeping coach, longest serving and most trusted lieutenant of Van Gaal, and Max Riekers. That's an unfortunate name, isn't it? The Wrecker. Max Riekers, chief analyst. He's only aged 34.
Yeah. Well, there's going to be no room for Roy Giggs in that setup. But anyway, let's just take a break from the back page and talk to Lee Sutherland. He's a massive Everton fan down in Australia.
Excellent.
And we'll find out whether he thinks that Everton should chuck the match in order to stop Liverpool from winning the title. Lee, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the show.
Morning, chaps. Very entertaining, and I must admit I'm a big Dallas fan myself, and I love JR. Got all the box sets too. Great winter watching.
Lee, you're a man...
You guys are like brothers in arms then. I'll just leave you to get on with it.
Exactly. You're a man from my own heart, Lee. Well done. And everything I've said about JR, I'm delighted you agree with me about. Anyway, it's great to hear an Everton voice coming from down under, from the other side of the world, mate. Tell me right from the start, what's your view of how we should approach the City game, bearing in mind the outcome of that game could massively affect where the Premier League title goes, and of course one option is Anfield.
Have you stopped breathing again? You started talking funny.
No.
All right, sorry.
I think
Lee, off you go.
There's two things. Everton are still short of points for the Europa League, which I firmly believe we should avoid like the plague.
So do I.
It will cause us problems next year because you're adding at least another 20 games onto a season. Yeah. So I don't want that.
I don't.
But I don't want to throw the game because that's obviously from a sporting point of view, that's not right. But looking at it from an honest point of view, Everton will go out there and put an honest shift in. But I don't think they've got the squad. We've run out of legs, and I just don't think we're going to get the victory or even a point that people are hoping for.
I think you're right.
Our season ended at the Arsenal game. That was it, all over and done with. And we just haven't even got a defence. You look at, you got Yaya Toure. He's back. He's fully fit, and he's on fire. Well, that boy we've got in, Alcaraz, he wants locking up over his performances over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah,
so unfortunately for Liverpool fans out there, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah. I was saying to Porky last weekend that guy Alcaraz should form part of the strike force at Everton, shouldn't he? I mean, there was a couple of good own goals he scored.
That's a very cheap shot.
It's not a cheap shot. It's true.
Lee. Poor guy, just got his head in the way after 53 seconds, and he'll be branded with that. Yeah, go on, Lee.
But, you look at some players, you think, and so many injuries at Everton now as well. And Alcaraz has been injured all season. I hope he would have carried that on. But there's just too many injuries. And I think you've got some of the stars there, who've probably got one eye on the World Cup as well. So everyone's probably eased back. And I think Martinez, as much as he wants to win the game, I firmly believe, and I reckon 99% of Evertonians believe, is avoid Europa League. We do not want it. So,
but the problem is,
how are you going to do that, though?
Exactly, we've got to drop below Spurs, haven't we, to avoid the Europa League?
We need 1 point. I'm pretty sure we need 1 point. So we're not going to get it against Manchester City, and then the final game of the season is away at Hull, and that's my fear, because Hull will have one eye on the FA Cup final. But then, Jelavic might come and haunt his old team and knock a few in, because that'll be the last game of the season for him, because he's cup tied and can't play in the FA Cup final.
Isn't there a scenario, guys, where if Arsenal, as you would expect them to, win the FA Cup, that there's another place created though in the league, or does it go to Hull City?
That goes to Hull City. That's why Wigan Athletic played in Europa this season.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But, no, I don't want Liverpool to win the league. That's plain and simple. After the Man City results, the way they were all carrying on down in Australia, they were having parties, they were just going on it. Life was absolutely unbearable. So, the Premier League is over 38 games, and I'm sorry, if they don't get enough points on the board after 38 games, they cannot start pointing the finger at Everton losing to a full-strength Manchester City side.
Exactly.
Who are going to be rampant on Saturday.
Exactly. I think our season ended actually with United at home, because
that's correct. Sorry, not the Arsenal game.
Exactly. And it was a burst of energy there. Did that. But I was at Southampton last week, and we were a little bit unlucky. I mean, like going into this, but 2 penalty claims turned down, which would have been very useful and all that. But you're right, Lee. I think we've just run out of steam, and we've done incredibly well. And remember, 10 games ago, right, Lee, we weren't even talking about the possibility of a Champions League place, not even a Europa League place, really, because we thought we'd sort of run into a bit of trouble. And then we had that tremendous run of 8 consecutive victories, then a defeat, and then the United game. So we've done incredibly well. But I'm like you. I'm like you. Let me just finish, mate. I'm like you. I do not want our players returning from some far-flung corner of Eastern Europe, the Ukraine or something, at 6 o'clock on Friday morning when they've got to turn out against, a decent team on Sunday. I just don't want it, because it's an absolute waste of our energy and our ability to have a great season domestically.
And I totally agree. And when I look at the season overall, there's been so many highlights and positive moments throughout the season.
Sure.
It doesn't really matter, even if we finish 10th. But there's some of the things that have happened this season. You've got to judge it and say, that was a successful season, because the fans, at last, we've had many a day out where we've had something to smile about, with some tremendous victories, both at home and away, against the likes of Manchester United. So it's all up. It's been a tremendous season, and I'd like to see us just concentrate on the Premier League next season, and let's make a decent effort to go for 4th next year. Because I tell you something, with Liverpool, when they've got the extra 20 games next season, they're not going to be a force in the Premier League like they have been this season.
Oh, no way. Liverpool know if they don't win it this season, it's out of their grasp again for another decade.
I don't think that's true.
No, it's true. Lee's absolutely right. Because
they're going to be able to spend more money in the summer because of Champions League football. They're going to be a stronger force next year.
They won't be able to spend money like City and Chelsea can spend money. And also, you've got to remember they've unveiled their plans for a new stadium. Where's that money coming from? You know, they're going to have to go through an Arsenal period, Lee, where 5 years of, you know, relatively modest spending if they want to redo their stadium.
Well, that's it, because the American owners at Liverpool are obviously quite sensible. And one thing they do is they don't go out and start splashing it. They've got very strict financial plans in place. And you're right, you know, they will turn around to Roger and say, look, this is the budget. Whatever you bring in, you can spend. But anything over and above, that goes through to the development of the new stadium, which they're desperate for, because, you know, they're 25,000 on the gate shy of Arsenal, Manchester United every single week. So what is their priority? To win the league or to get a new stadium and create something for the next 20 years?
Absolutely.
But I think the way that Liverpool have done it, as you say, is sensible, because what they've done is they've given Brendan Rodgers enough money to make sure that he can keep hold of people like Suarez. They haven't let him go.
But Suarez will go, won't he?
Well, I don't know whether. I think if Real Madrid come in from this summer, he might do. He's given another interview in the last 24 hours in Uruguay to say that he's not going anywhere. But you never really know.
Go.
But in the end, if Liverpool have a decent run in the Champions League, if they can get out of the group stages, they'll get more money, and it will build. And I don't agree with you. I think Everton are going to struggle to get in the top four without any more money than they've got.
Well, we'll have to see. I mean, Martinez has done incredibly well on the loan situation.
I was asking Lee, actually. I was asking Lee, he's our guest.
Yes, I know Lee is
Lee answered the question.
Guest. Yeah, I'm going to let him answer.
You can talk about Everton any time.
You've done far too much talking during this interview. Lee, please go on.
No, I think Martinez has proven what he can do in the transfer market, and he's been quite shrewd, and Everton have said that there is money there from sales earlier on in the year. So he has got a little bit of cash there, and you'd hope, that there's some more money to come forward. And, look, if he can get 30 to 40 million and then go out and use the loan market as well as he has done this season, then why not? Clubs will look. Chelsea will be rubbing their hands looking at Everton. They loaned us Lukaku. Same with Deulofeu from Barcelona. Barcelona will be looking at Everton going, that's amazing what they've done. Without kicking a ball for their own clubs, their value is skyrocketed.
Yes, that's right.
Lukaku could go for 25 million plus. Deulofeu is an 18-year-old fringe player in the under-21s. Now, Barcelona will look and go, that's what we want. They're actually developing our players. Someone could turn around and say, the way football is now, well, you can loan one of our players because you'll double his value, or at least put an extra 10 million on it.
Barcelona have already said if they've got to take Deulofeu back, we can have another couple of lads from their academy because we've treated them so well and helped them to develop. So that's all positive.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I think what Everton have proven this season is how to use the loan system properly. It's a loan system. Someone like Gareth Barry, he's been amazing this season, and we've got the option to buy because he's at the end of his contract. And there's been teams all around the Premier League complaining that Everton used the loan system, which is a system in place which anyone can use.
Of course they can.
Because we chose to use it rather than going the Spurs way and taking a punt on £100 million and it all going horribly wrong. We chose to go, let's get them on a free, let's see if it works out, and then we'll take the option to buy. So Everton have proven, and Martinez has proven, that possibly is the way forward, and the blueprint for other clubs who haven't got money to burn to follow that example.
Absolutely right.
Lee, I really appreciate your coming on. We've got to go because we're running out of time, but we need to find out from other clubs as well if they're trying to avoid the Europa League. I said this the other week. I did a show on it, in fact. Everton don't really want to be in the Europa League. Tottenham don't really want to be in it. Man United certainly don't want to be in it. But those three clubs are the only three that have got any chance, I suppose, of going in it. I suspect Hull City wouldn't want to be in it either if they go because Arsenal wins the FA Cup. But let's talk to Djanga, who's a Chelsea fan. Don't forget, of course, this year the Europa League winner will get a place in the Champions League. Djanga, very good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning. How are we doing?
Yeah, very well. What would you like to say?
Well, I don't understand why everyone's being negative about the Europa League, because Everton's a perfect example. I can't even remember the last time they was in Europe. But why do they think they can go straight into the Champions League and do well? They're better off going in the Europa League, gaining some experience, and also you get some good away days for the fans. And you can use all your squad, so your reserves get decent playing time. And then, build up a couple of years in the Europa League, like Atletico Madrid have done. So when you do it the Champions League, you you're equipped for it. You've got more chance of going places.
Yeah, Dejanga, listen, some of your arguments I understand, but I don't accept them. As an Evertonian, I do not want my players playing away in Romania on a Thursday night and having to face a top 4 team on Sunday back in England.
Or even in Bulgaria.
Or Bulgaria. Or, even as far away as, Ukraine, Turkey, something like that. I just don't want it. And it's all very well for you to say...
I know you'll be playing football in Ukraine for a while.
we were in Europe 2 seasons ago, 2.5 seasons ago. And, it was then, shooting out to strange places and all that. It just puts a terrible strain on the resources.
Spore and places like that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it puts a terrible strain on the resources of a club like ours. Now, the thing is, Dejanga, you, of course, are talking from the pompous, elevated position of being a fan of Chelsea who get free money. You've probably only been a Chelsea fan a few years
Why
since
you having
became...
a go at Dejanga?
Well, because he's trying to tell me...
He's entitled to his opinion.
And I'm entitled to mine. He's trying to tell me how to run my club, Everton. I'm trying to tell him how his is being run.
Dejanga, don't take any rubbish from him. Please feel free to give us your opinion.
But the other thing is, you've got teams like Borough and Fulham who got all the way to the final. I bet they're paying a good money about being in the Europa League that season.
Well, to me, it's a pointless competition. I mean, the other thing is, Dejanga, talking about money, you don't make any money at all being in the Europa League. I mean, one tie, when we were in the Europa League nearly a decade ago now, under Davy Moyes, we got total TV revenues of £100,000 for one tie. I mean, Wayne Rooney gets paid 3 times that a week. It just doesn't make...
You're gaining experience and you're keeping your squad happy and you're building for the future. So when you do it in the Champions League, you hit it running.
But you're draining your resources, mate. If you've got a team good enough to be in the Champions League, who haven't got a great deal of European experience, they can rise to the occasion, just as Spurs did under Harry Redknapp. Okay, but this idea that you're getting great European experience playing in the Europa League, it's rubbish. It's a rubbish competition.
But I think it was good for Chelsea.
Teams.
It was good for Chelsea when they won it, Dejanga, because I think the point is that it's only in the last sort of 2 or 3 rounds, that right at the end of the season, that it's actually worth being in.
And you play anybody decent.
But I think anyone who's been in it for the whole season has suffered, haven't they?
No, not really. You're thinking about teams like Birmingham and Wigan that got relegated. But look at Juventus and Benfica and Seville.
Yeah, but Juventus and Benfica dropped down out of the Champions League, though. They weren't in it from the beginning.
Benfica, I wasn't sure about it, actually.
But that's right. But the point is that...
They should change that. That's the one thing they should change, to be honest. That's a bit silly, but the rest of it, that's a bad competition, and you can have a trophy to win. I can't remember last time, sorry about being rude about Everton, but when was they in Europe? Was the last time they won a cup? It's another cup to go for.
Well, and also,
it's too big a cost, though. It's not big enough trophy.
But also, now that there's going to be a prize, which is a Champions League place, if you actually win the Europa League. But I don't think Everton are good enough to go all the way through to have effectively 2 squads, which you'd need, one for the Premier League,
it's not that we're
one
not
for the
good
Europa
enough. We
League.
just don't have the resources.
Well, that's what I mean. Not good enough in the sense that there's no depth to the squad, and not half the players are loaned, and you just can't do it that way. It's not going to work. But thanks very much indeed for your call, Dejanga. We've got more to take on the Europa League and much more besides. Coming up in the next hour, we're going to be talking about a wasp's nest that I've discovered in my garden shed, and we're going to be asking Mr. Parry for his advice on the best way to get rid of it. Also, if you've got any thoughts on that, we want to hear from them. You can text us on 81089, you can email via the website talksport.com, and of course you can find us on social media at TS Extra Time, at Mike Parry 8 and at IROMG. If you look actually out there on social media, you'll find, in case you missed it, the experiment that happened earlier on in the show, where Mike Parry held his breath for a grand total of 40 seconds. He claims it's going to make him live longer. I'm not sure. I'm not convinced at all. What's the name of that thing you were doing?
Pardon?
What do you mean, pardon? What's the name of that thing you were doing?
What thing? What do you mean,
thing? The breathing thing.
It's called Buteyko, and it's the art.
I just asked what it was called.
Well, it's called Buteyko, and you say you're trying to mock it by asking me what it's called. Everybody knows Buteyko. We've had callers on from Australia talking about how it's curing asthma in Australia. Yeah, it's very famous.
This is what happens when you ask one simple question. Lots more to come. Mr. Parry, now I've got a very, very serious question to ask you because earlier on, out on social media, I tweeted this out, a picture of a wasp's nest that I've discovered.
Horrible, looked horrible.
That is in, it's like a cone-shaped thing.
Looks like a carbuncle.
Yeah, well, you know, wasps are very clever. Apparently what they do, there's things called, there's two different groups of wasps. These are social wasps. I've been doing a bit of reading up on this because I've had to get some
social
expert...
wasps?
Social wasps, yeah. What they do is they live together in a they create basically their own hive. But what they do is they generally...
And so do bees.
Well, bees do, and bees are useful, though, because bees make honey, obviously. And so, you know, they've got some point to them. Wasps don't appear to have any point to them apart from their place in the ecosystem. And they can sting more than once as well, which is a bit disturbing.
Which is the one that you stings and it dies?
I think that's the bee that stings and it dies.
Is it?
Yeah. Whereas wasps have got 3 stings, I believe. But the problem is that, you know, they do these... They normally do them in...
Hornets.
They can do them in... Hornets are horrible. They can do them in your attic, or they can do them under the eaves of your roof. This one has been found inside the shed that I've got down in the country, and I'm going to tackle it basically the weekend.
Horsefly.
I've decided it's not a horsefly nest. No, it's wasps.
Horsefly
right?
the worst, I'm told.
Well, no, wasps are actually the worst because wasps will work together. You see, this is my point.
Yeah, okay.
And they can, if you let them grow, you can get as many as 5,000 of these wasps.
Well, listen, when you saw this nest developing, why didn't you just kill it at birth?
I didn't see it developing. I got a picture sent to me because I haven't been there since the weekend, and it was spotted by my son.
Well, hang on,
who's very frightened of wasps.
You're not telling me that a wasp nest with 5,000 wasps in it suddenly
I'm not saying it's got
appeared
5,000.
overnight. Why didn't you inspect your property and look after your buildings properly and go in, and once you saw it emerging...
I didn't see it before.
Well, are you blind?
No, I'm not blind.
It's a massive, great wasp nest stuck on the roof of your shed.
It's not massive, no. I mean, I don't know how big it is because I haven't physically seen it. All I've got is a picture of it, which I've tweeted out.
Who took the picture?
People can judge. My son took the picture of it.
How dare you let your little son go anywhere near that wasp nest? I mean, you can die of wasp stings, don't you?
Well, you can if you have too many of them. And he's unfortunately, he gets stung by wasps a lot because for some reason they like his skin or they like his blood. I don't know what it is. But, I mean, he's quite a victim of wasp stings. Everywhere we go,
I've never been stung by a wasp.
Have you not? Yeah, I think I have, yeah.
Don't think I have.
And if you get stung by one wasp, it's not a problem. But the thing is, I'm looking for some help from the audience as well. And you can text me and you can send me an email as well. But I've also sought the guidance of a wasp expert, and he says, well, if you really want to do it on your own, basically there's 2 ways to do it. You can get one of those smoke machines where you can smoke them out. I didn't think I could just stand under it and smoke a lot of cigarettes, but I think you have to have a proper smoke machine.
You do.
Real smoke, right? But the other thing you can do is you can buy this kind of chemical sort of spray foam type stuff. And his advice is to get that, spray it into the hole, and then run like hell, and go back about 2 or 3 hours later, and they should all be gone. That's what
why?
he says.
When you put the foam in, they come out, do they?
Well, what it does is it sort of acts as a kind of a slow...
Right.
I think they either get killed or they just leave.
Right. Well, I know a way around it because the extermination guy came to my place last year to get rid of the mad squirrels which had invaded my loft. Okay.
Yeah.
And this guy comes with this little ladder.
How do you know they were mad?
Well, they must be. They're running round like crazy.
Well, that's what squirrels do.
Yeah, well, you know...
It doesn't make them mad.
Well, in that case... What's something in my mouth?
Doing?
I'm sorry, I've got something in my mouth. There's a hair or something. Sorry about that.
Well, that's not surprising. Your mouth was surrounded by hair.
Yeah, well, no, that's my name. I don't know what's happened. Sorry about that. What is this? I don't know. Something happened. Anyway, look,
I'm sorting it out. Breathing exercise. What's it called again?
It's called Buteyko.
Buteyko?
Yeah, B-U-T-E-Y-K-O. Buteyko. It's Mr. Buteyko.
Right.
I mean,
Mr. Buteyko head.
Yeah. You see, you're laughing, but we've already had a caller on from Australia who's justified it. Now, getting back to wasps, right?
Yeah.
I know a bit about it because when the guy came and got rid of the crazy squirrels, which you have to get rid of, I mean, you can't just say, oh, you know, hello, nice squirrel, could you leave my loft, please? So I'm afraid they have to be actually exterminated.
You had them killed, did you?
Well, they have to be.
That's different from killing wasps. I mean, the squirrels are nice little furry creatures.
Yeah, but I like squirrels. But I said, look, you know, I don't mind.
So what, was he just carrying out one dead squirrel after another then?
Well, I don't know, because, I mean, I didn't want to stay there and witness it. He's got a little ladder, which is only 2 feet high, but it goes chink, 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 and pulls out into a 12-foot-long ladder, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's a marvellous little contraption. I'm going to get one.
Did he hit them with it, then?
Eh?
Did he hit them with it?
No, you have to get up in the loft on the ladder, don't you?
Right.
You fool.
Haven't you got a loft ladder?
No,
really?
No, I haven't got a loft ladder.
Your house actually is like something out of the 50s, isn't it?
No,
you were exchanging pictures of food a little bit earlier.
That's right.
Because I made this really delightful fish curry for myself a little bit earlier.
Well, I wouldn't have made a fish curry.
Well, you wouldn't know how to make a fish curry.
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't want to make a fish curry either. You know, anybody who's got enough time to stand around making fish curries
takes no time at all.
Hasn't got enough to do in life. That's
takes no time at all. But
you know, perhaps you should have gone home and visited your children or something like that instead of staying in town and making a fish curry.
No, I'm frightened of the wasp nest.
Yeah,
anyway, that's not the point. point. The point is you then put something out about some battered fish that you'd bought from Tesco's, right? Yeah. On top of a cooker, which looked like something out of 1918.
No, it didn't.
Nobody's ever seen such an old cooker.
Utter rubbish.
Unbelievable looking
That cooker was only fitted in my kitchen 5 years ago.
I bet you've never used it.
Of course I do. I'll put my fish fingers in the oven. And
you warm up the Chinese?
No, I don't warm up Chinese. I get Chinese delivered hot. Anyway, look, the point of the story is getting back to the wasps. I know exactly what's going on. Because I said to this fella, funny enough, I said, look, do you do all exterminations? He said, oh, yeah. He said, rats. I said, well, I don't get any rats around here. We don't have rats. And he said, do the squirrels, obviously. He said, and we do, because I was very concerned, and still am, about the ladybird invasion.
Is that still going on?
Yeah, I think one of the windows has been sort of burrowed out by ladybirds. I think they live in it. I think they live in one of the window frames. But, I'm getting that sorted anyway. And he said, but one of the worst ones, he said, in a place like this, because I've got eaves overlooking the windows, he said, would be like a wasp nest. And I said, oh, what do you do? He said, well, let me advise you if it ever happens. First of all, smear your skin. And he said, in something to keep them away from your skin. And he said, believe it or not, the best thing is Brussels pâté. If you get
You'd have to buy an awful lot of Brussels pâté to smear your skin in it, wouldn't you?
No, you wouldn't really. Get a tub of Brussels pâté. It's very cheap, 65p at Tesco's, because I buy it and put it on toast, Right. And you smear that over your skin.
It's a smooth kind, though. It's not the rough kind.
No, it's the smooth kind.
Pâté de campagne.
Smooth kind. Apparently, that drives wasps mad. They just flee from Brussels pâté. I don't know why.
Well, maybe I could smear their nest in Brussels pâté.
Well, no. What you do is then...
Or get some kind of a gun to fire the Brussels pâté into the
nest. No. It's easy. The one thing that wasps hate is heat. Okay, that's why you smoke them out.
Yeah, but heat makes them mad, though. Heat makes them sting you.
No, it doesn't. Not if you do it properly. Because what he said, get one of those, what are they called? The things used to burn paint off wood. Like, not a flamethrower. A blowtorch? No, not a blowtorch. No, it's not a blowtorch.
A blowtorch.
A blowtorch is the thing used to open safes, you fool. It's got
a flame that comes out.
Is it a blowtorch?
It is a blowtorch.
Okay, yeah, fine. So he said, just get all that and just set fire to the nest. He said,
but if I set fire to the nest, that'll set fire to the shed. And then the shed will burn.
No, it won't. No, it won't. No, make it controlled. Have a fire extinguisher with you, so you just burn the nest, okay? And set fire to it, and all those wasps will just burn and frizzle, and they'll be gone. And I said, do you carry a blowtorch around? He said, well, sometimes. He said, sometimes you have to do it. And there's no danger of setting fire to a house or anything like that, because it would be very limited. But that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, well, maybe I'll go and buy a blowtorch.
Well, where are you going to get a smoke machine from?
I'm not going to get a smoke machine.
It's easier to buy a blowtorch.
You're not listening, are you? I told you I'm going to get this chemical spray, which has nothing to do with blowtorches.
Well, that sounds like a load of nonsense to me. That just means they'll all be flying around stinging you. I'd get out I'd be merciless with them. They're horrible creatures. I'd get the blowtorch and I'd burn them all to death within 15 seconds. What's wrong with that?
Like Rambo.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I would. Yeah, I'd Rambo them.
I think there's more chance of them stinging me if I do that.
I don't think there is.
I think this idea, which the wasp expert has told me, but if you know more better, then do text me on 81089.
I told you they won't sting you if you rub Brussels pâté.
Well, I'm not going to go out in there
all over your hands and your face.
I'm thinking about buying one of those beekeeper's hats. Actually,
load of rubbish. Because they'll sting you somewhere else on your body if you don't prepare to.
No, because you put gloves on.
You've got to show them who's boss. You've got to show them who's boss, okay? Because they have instincts, wasps, and they attack the weakest, most vulnerable people in society. That's probably where they go after your little boy, because they know he's only little and he can't defend himself, you know?
Yeah, no, it's a horrible situation. Anyway, I'll let you know on Monday how it goes.
Yeah, good.
And obviously, if I turn up covered in welts, it'll mean that I've been attacked by in a huge way. Did you see that golfer, by the way, the other weekend?
To jump in the lake?
Yeah, to jump in the lake. He was attacked by a swarm of hornets.
Hornets. Don't sound good
which
to me.
Which are about 3 times the size of wasps. They're really horrible, yeah.
Horsefly, they are.
They're not horseflies, no. They are not.
In America, they're horsefly.
No, they're not.
They are.
Well, we don't just sit here and go, yes, they are, no, they're not.
I'm sorry, but I'm trying to educate you and tell you something you don't know, and you just refuse to have knowledge imparted into your head.
Yeah, well, here's one from somebody called Mr. Cherith in Enfield. He says, Mike, please ask Mr. Parry about the video of him being very cocky before eating a spoon of cinnamon on YouTube. Surely one of the greatest things available to watch via the internet. If people haven't seen that, they can also, or if they like that, they can now watch you on social media trying to hold your breath for 40 seconds.
Yeah,
it's almost as funny.
No, it's not. No, the cinnamon thing was a challenge, which I passed with flying colours. It was a painful experience, but I was asked to do it, and I did it. And, if you want to see that, it's old Porky Parry and the Cinnamon Challenge. It's on YouTube, as you're quite rightly saying. By the way, What are our social addresses, Mike, so our people can keep in touch
Well, yours
with
is
us?
at Mike Parry 8. Mine
That's
is
it.
at IROMG. And, of course, the show is at TS Extra Time. A couple of texts here as well that have come in on 81089. Maybe you can get rid of that wasp nest by holding your breath for a minute. And here's one from Brian, who's a blue, who says, I wonder if Porky held his breath for 10 minutes, would we all live that bit longer? Why don't you give it a go? We've got another 45 minutes to go. If you hold your breath for 10 minutes, I can do the next bit on my own.
Well, you would want to do that because do you know what would happen? You'd hear the resounding sound of people turn their radios off all over the world.
Yeah, very funny. We are the two Mikes. Coming up next, we're going to find out some more about the car problems of Mr. Parry. Andy in Northwich says, Mike, wasps love protein. The pate idea is total conkers. In season, there can be as many as 5 million wasps per square mile. And another one says, smearing yourself with Brussels pate may deter the wasps, but wouldn't it attract flies and other insects? And the neighbourhood dogs would probably chase you. And Jeff says, chemical spray sorted my wasp nest out. It's very good. So, there you go.
Yeah, but you only have the Brussels pate on while you're sorting out the wasp. Afterwards, you go and have a shower and you take it all off again.
Oh, so it all goes down the drain.
Not like you're walking around all day, is it? You know, thinking, I think I'll walk up the road now and give Rover a little lick of my arm.
Well, my dog will
so
probably
he can have a
attack
bit of
me as
Brussels
well
pate.
if I do that. Pete from Cleethorpes says, Hi, Mike, so I got stung by a bee once. It charged me £10 for a jar of honey. Boom, boom. Do you get it? Now,
really,
before we talk about spare tyres, which is one of the big subjects of the show tonight, which we want to talk about, because you've had a bit of trouble once again with your car, because you've had punctures all over the place. We're going to talk to Sandra Lee, our good friend down in Sydney, because you know what? The last time we spoke to Sandra, it was a few weeks ago, and we were still at that point hopeful that there would be some sign of life or some sign of something from
recovery.
That missing plane from
Unbelievable, isn't it?
Malaysian Airlines.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, only yesterday there was a development, I think, because more or less the Australian Prime Minister has pretty much ruled out finding any wreckage now on the surface of the seas, now saying that, there's absolutely no chance of that. And the other development, I think, was that the relatives of those who are missing still have been more or less, they've been treated very badly, these people. They've been now told to sort of ship out of the hotel that they're in because there's no point in them hanging around anymore, which is dreadful. Let's talk to Sandra and find out precisely what has been going on. Sandra, very good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Double Mikes.
Yeah, hi Sandra, lovely to hear from you again.
Delightful to have you on once again. Tell us what the latest is with the missing plane, because we haven't really had much news on it for the last few days, but in the last 24 hours there's been a sort of renewed interest in it, hasn't there?
You're absolutely right, Mike. Malaysian officials are booting out the victims' families out of the hotels throughout various countries, whether they're in Malaysia or China, which is pretty rough justice if you think about it. And yesterday here, the man who is leading the search for the plane, Angus Houston, who used to be our former Chief of Defence, he says that he is absolutely 100% confident that they will find the wreckage on the bottom of the ocean off the coast of Western Australia. And so now Australia is committing $60 million in a search. We're looking over an area of 700 kilometres long and 80 kilometres wide. And they're introducing 3 more undersea vessels, which they are hoping that within the year will find the wreckage.
Sandra, I can't believe that. How can this man possibly express such confidence in his own ability to locate a plane when there's not one single piece of scientific evidence or of wreckage coming to the surface to indicate that the plane's there?
I know, it seems incredible, but he is pretty confident that it's going to be in this area that is off...
What's that based on? What's that based on? Because, initially, there was this British company, wasn't there, that said, don't worry, we've picked up the pings from the, the black boxes and we've got the last signals where the plane went down. Now, I'm not saying that their evidence is discredited, but there is simply no credible scientific evidence of where that plane is.
No, and also you're absolutely right, because the wreckage could have been shifted by all the undersea currents. Really, I think it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. But they seem to be confident. Angus Houston seems to be very confident that it will be found. So who knows? Give the man a medal if he does.
Yeah. The other strange development I was reading just a few hours ago is it says documents released by the Malaysian government reveal that there was a 4-hour delay before the search actually began. It took the authorities 17 minutes to realise the plane had disappeared from radar, but then 4 hours before they actually initiated initiated a search because this is the document which is entitled Actions Taken Between 1:38 and 6:14 on Saturday the 8th of March. And it was all this confusion, it seems, by the Malaysian Aeronautical Rescue Coordination Centre.
Yes, that sort of was an amazing report that came out. Curiously, it was only a 3-page report, which is pretty light on details. And you're right, they said that nothing was done for 17 minutes. Well, Malaysian officials did nothing for 17 minutes after it last went off the radar, and then they waited that 4 hours, during which time, you'd think that, well, we'd be able to pin down where it was, and they did nothing. So there's a lot of criticism of the Malaysian officials in the industry.
Actually, can I just develop that point, Sandra? Because I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
I've noticed that with the plane that's gone missing and also the ferry that sunk in the Philippines, right? Yeah. What I find very strange from a point of view of a British person is that when we have disasters in this country, you have a horrible train crash and unfortunately it's multiple casualties. When you have horrible tragedies in your country, like for instance bushfires in the Blue Mountains and people lose their lives sadly in their homes, we take it as an act of God. We take it as something that happens in the normal course of human life. But whenever anything seems to have happened in Asia of this magnitude, the authorities are always blamed. It's the government didn't do enough. This particular body is at fault here. Why aren't people helping us? And they have a different attitude to who's responsible for what I think are naturally, human events.
It is curious, isn't it? They do seem to have a bit of a victimhood mentality, and it seems to be pervasive. It's almost cultural. It's not like we have and you have over there in England. Things do happen. Human error does happen, and catastrophes do emerge as a result of that.
Mind you, these two episodes you're talking about, I think it was Korea actually, wasn't it? The ferry.
Korea, I'm sorry.
There were some terrible mistakes made there, and had those mistakes not been made, lives perhaps wouldn't have been lost. So you can understand why they would be upset. But with the plane,
with the aircraft one, it's more relevant, the aircraft one, and naturally, Sandra, I'm involved in this conversation. Somebody made a mistake and the plane crashed, but the family's response to all that is to absolutely go mad with grief towards the authorities. It's all your fault. You haven't done enough. You haven't found the plane. Well, looking for an aeroplane that's crashed due to pilot error or something is rather difficult.
But isn't that also, Sandra, because of the way that they've reacted to it and the way they thought? The relatives of the people on this plane have been treated pretty abysmally. And this latest episode, as you were saying, where they've been asked to leave the hotel, how are they going to deal with that?
Yeah, I know, that's pretty crook, isn't it, when you think about it? These poor families, they're not getting any information from Malaysian Airlines, or very little, and it's quite sporadic when they do get it. And, of course, when they get it, it's lacking in detail because they simply don't know what's been going on. So I think that sort of sense of victimhood is magnified because of that response from the officials and also from the government and the airline.
The bottom line seems to be that they're not really any closer to even knowing what happened, never mind trying to find wherever the plane is, right? They've been visiting this theory of Porky's actually as well about the batteries on board, because they've now discovered there are many more of these batteries than they thought in the first place, and they could have been the subject of a fire or something, right?
That's right.
Are they still floating these really warped kind of theories that it landed in Afghanistan, that it might have crashed? no, seriously, that it might have crashed into a forest in Borneo, which may be an unexplored forest, and therefore that's why. What I'm saying is there's still a totally closed mind to the fate of this plane, other than it crashing into the depths of the Indian Ocean.
Yes, that's what they're thinking, and they're basing all of that on the last known sort of transmissions and where it was in the last radar thing. So I think you have to give them the science on that.
Yeah.
Now, before we let you go, Sandra, let's talk about Ian Thorpe, because the Torpedo, as he's known, Australian swimming legend. He was a great star of the 2012 Olympics here because he was a pundit on the BBC coverage and everybody loved him and he was fantastic. He's been released from hospital in the last couple of days. He was in intensive care because he'd got an infection contracted following shoulder surgery. He's not having a great time, is he?
No, poor old Thorpe. You know what? He is one of our most loved athletes of any type in Australia. He's a really top bloke, and everybody just thinks, oh, God, can he take another, turn? He did have double infection, one of those really dangerous golden staph type infections after his shoulder surgery. So that whacked him about a bit, and he was taking medication for that. But he also suffers depression, and he was taking antidepressants as well. So that put him in a bit of a tailspin a couple of months ago. He ended up going into rehab to try and sort of work himself out and to get treated for the depression. But he really can't turn a trick at the moment, the poor old Thorpe.
Yeah, and I mean, is there anybody kind of coming to his aid? I mean, it's the age-old question, I suppose. If he is suffering from depression, because he was found sort of wandering in a disoriented state after having taken a combination of antidepressants and medication before this injury was actually operated on, wasn't he?
No, that was after the injury was first operated on, but it was when the first infection occurred.
Uh-huh.
So they put him on this, pretty heavy cocktail of drugs, and also combining it with the antidepressants. That wasn't sort of a great thing. He did go into rehab. He came out of rehab. Yesterday, his manager came out and said that it's unlikely that he will go back into rehab for his depression. He seems to be coping at the moment. But like anybody who's suffered from the black dog, it can hit at any time. And it's one of those things that's just so unpredictable.
It certainly is. And Sandra, finally, tell me, is World Cup fever hitting Australia? Because, of course, you'll be off to, well, not you personally, but your team will be off to Brazil soon. Here in England, of course, we've got to get the football season finished in the next 2 or 3 weeks, and then we're away. But has it gripped you yet?
It hasn't quite yet. It's one of those things, I think, because it is sort of, on the other side of the world, even though it's still in the southern hemisphere, so it's not too far from us, really. It hasn't sort of taken off, and we've got 2 other football codes that are sort of going great guns at the moment, so that's really the focus.
OK, that's interesting to know. Tim Cahill, is he still the big footballing hero down there?
No, sort of. I think his luster has worn off a little bit. There are others who are sort of like, taking over.
Sure.
But
he's
he's also one of those guys.
Yeah,
he's retired.
Yeah, but he's still an ambassador, isn't he, for the Australian
he used to play for
football
Everton.
nation? Well, of course he did. I mean, he's a brilliant boy. As always, Sandra... Sorry?
You call it football, we call it soccer over here.
Yeah, I know, but that's the American name for it, so that's why we kind of ignore that, you know what I mean? But Sandra, as always, an absolute pleasure to converse with you again.
It's been lovely talking to you.
Thank you very much
Sandra.
indeed.
We'll talk to you again soon. Sandra Lee there reporting into us from Sydney, Australia, where football is actually not much of a sport.
Oh, it is. It is. Tim Cahill's poster, even though he's retired, and you're quite right, he has retired, but he's like... I mean, Tim Cahill to Australia is David Beckham to England. Yeah. He's still a massive ambassador for the game, you know what I mean? And he'll be part of the Australian...
He was playing for the New York Red Bulls, wasn't he, for a while?
He was, yeah. He'll be part of the Australian, Team Australia, so to speak, that goes out there. You bet your life on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. Yeah. And, of course, don't forget, every single game in the World Cup is live right here on TalkSport.
Sure
Coming
is.
up next, we're going to talk about spare tyres, and we're also going to look ahead to the big games of the Premier League coming up, and we'll see whether Porky's predictions last week were any better than the week before when he got 3 out of 10. This is TalkSport. This is TalkSport Extra Time. I'm Mike Graham. He is Mike Porky Parry. We've got a lot to do. We're going to look ahead to the weekend's Premier League fixtures shortly, Mike. We'll see how you did last week. I suspect not particularly well. And we'll see how you can predict...
Oh, you say that without any evidence, of course.
Well, I mean, I just know from experience that you normally do 3-4 out of 10 is normally a good result for you. Anyway, let's talk about cars, because you've got the incredible smoking Mercedes car, which every time you drive it, it seems to be something coming off it or blowing off it.
Just
you've had about 4 punctures already. You've only had the car a couple of months.
Just because it was new and had a bit of grease on the engine block, and I walked, and it was at the time of the big rain, so I was going through puddles. Well, not puddles, going through lakes of water.
It was raining quite hard again when you came up tonight, wasn't it?
It was, it was raining. But no, listen, what I've found out is this. Now, I've had 2 puncture situations in the Merc since I got it. Now, the good thing is that the computer's so sophisticated that you first learn about your puncture on the dashboard. Yeah. And it says, check tyre pressure in tyre 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or something like that, and you think, that's funny, you get out and it doesn't look like he's got a puncture to me. But then you get to quick fit, there's nothing better, or no, was it nothing faster than a quick fit fitter? Sorry, I was not giving them a plug, but they did.
Well, you just did.
No, but they did very well for me, because I went in there and I said, look, I can't see a problem. The guy, anyway, he said, looked at it and he got his machine, and a tiny, literally tiny screw where the head had broken off had gone into the tyre. So it was going down very, very slowly, On the other occasion, the valve had busted and the air was coming out very, very slowly.
They're 2 very unusual types of punctures.
2 very unusual types of punctures in 2 different tyres,
right? It's as though somebody's firing darts at them or something.
Yeah, something like that.
I think somebody is.
But anyway, the point is, I thought about that and I thought, well, I'm going to have to learn how to change the tyre because it might happen again. I might be jinxed with tyres.
Do you not know how to do that then?
Well, I haven't done it for years.
Has it got a jack?
Well, this is the point, you see. This is the point. Anyway, it hasn't got a jack, as far as I can tell.
Right.
Well, at least, I might be wrong. Maybe it has. But it hasn't even got a spare tyre. Now, the point, I think it's got one of those, band type things, like half a, half a wheel.
Small tyre.
Half a wheel. I think it'll get you...
We've talked about this before. It's not half a wheel. It's a whole wheel.
Yeah.
It's just a smaller wheel.
Whatever.
If it was half a wheel, it wouldn't work, would it? 'Cause it would be a semicircle.
Anyway, the point of my story is, when I sort of made a complaint, said, look, why don't you just give spare tyres out like you used to? When I had my first Vauxhall Fever, it had a big spare tyre in the boot, which is better than the tyres on the car.
Right.
So the answer to that is, it's an EU regulation now that new cars cannot carry spare tyres.
Really? Because that can't be right. 'Cause you see some of these big 4x4s with a big tyre on the back, like Jeeps and Land Cruisers and things like that, even Land Rovers.
I don't even know if there's a wheel underneath the covers, because it's always got it's an advertising cover on it, isn't it? But and I don't know the answer there. But what I was told was this: the weight of a new spare tyre is so heavy, it will impede the ecological progress of the car, i.e. you'll be using more fuel to haul around the spare tyre that most of the time you don't need.
So there's some kind of EU directive.
Yeah, except it's an EU directive. Except get this, Mike, get this. My research has, now concluded, and it's actually, you're going to use more fuel by not having a spare tyre. Do you know how?
How?
If I broke down in the middle of Bodmin Moor or Dartmoor or the middle of Cornwall...
Or somewhere where there weren't very many garages
or the Scottish Highlands... or the Lake District, or the Fen District, or, you get my drift?
I do.
Get my drift,
Somewhere in the middle of nowhere.
Somewhere in the middle of nowhere. You get on the phone, you say to the guy, look, I need...
If you can get a signal in the middle of nowhere, which
you
might
probably
not be
wouldn't.
able to do.
Probably wouldn't. So, you have to make amends for that. Anyway, the point of the story is, the RAC man comes, he looks at it, says, oh, you've got a flat tyre. So I know I've got flat tyres, so I called you. Yeah, but the problem is... you're so far away from civilization, we can't put the half tyre on.
But surely you would have to put the half tyre on, wouldn't you?
No, you can call people out to do it, pay them to do it.
Right.
I wouldn't dream of doing that. I might get it wrong and wreck the car. Anyway, the point of the story is, guy says, I'll go and get you a new tyre. Well, how far you got to go? Oh, 40 miles to Bodmin or somewhere like that. And then 40 miles back.
So you'd have to stay in one spot, in other words.
You stay in one spot. He drives 40 miles there, 40 miles back with this new tyre. Now, how much petrol is that using?
A lot more than if you were carrying a spare tyre.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was about to say to you. So a guy has to drive off 40, that's 80 miles of travelling to get you a new tyre, put it on the car, and then you're done. But, I mean, it's utterly ludicrous.
Yeah. Well, I've got the same situation, only even more bizarre, because some cars now don't even have a small tyre that you can affix to the wheel if the other one goes flat. My one, because it's French, has got this kind of foam package that you have, which is supposedly put underneath the passenger seat. It's like foam, and you're supposed to blow the foam into the tyre to keep it inflated so that you can drive to the nearest garage.
But if the tyre's got a hole in it, it'll all come out the hole.
Well, no, if the tyre's got a hole in it on the sort of the road side, if you like, not the side of not the wall of the tyre, but if it's on the road side of the tyre, this apparently will it's a bit like polyfiller, effectively. So it seals up the hole, which enables you to drive, but again, only for about 10 miles to the nearest garage to get it fixed. Problem is, when I got a puncture, and you might remember this, it was a while ago, I told you the story, it was actually on the side, it was on the wall of the tyre, because I'd slammed the side of the car into a very high pavement. And it actually ripped the side of the tyre.
Irresponsible driving.
Well, not really. I was parking, actually. I mean, I was going very slowly, but it was a very sharp pavement. Anyway, when I called the
sharp to rip your tyre.
Yeah, it was really sharp, yeah. It's like a flagstone.
Which town was this in?
This was outside my place in London.
Oh, and they sharpened up the pavements there, do they?
They actually are very sharp. I'll show you if you like.
Oh,
if
really?
you want to come
they're
down.
made of flint or something.
They are, they're flagstones, like the things, like big sort of patio types of paving slabs.
I wonder sometimes if you should be let loose on the road.
The guy comes down and he's coming to repair my tyre after I've told him I need a new tyre. And he turns up and goes, I don't carry tyres. I'm like, how do you mean you don't carry tyres? You're a van that replaces tyres. Yes, I am. You don't carry tyres, no.
Sorry, he comes from a tyre depot, but he hasn't got any tyres.
Doesn't bring any tyres, no. And he said, well, have you got the kit?
Is this man right for that job?
Well, he said to me, so you've got one of these kits. He said, have you got the kit? And I said, well, I don't know where it is. Because, it's supposed to be underneath the driver's seat. I can't find it. It's meant to be underneath the passenger seat. Can't find it there. I never could find it. And he said, well, in any event, it wouldn't work. So we'll have to we had to drive to a place similar to Quick Fit, get a new tyre and drive all the way back, which took about an hour and a half. So more kind of pollution
through
into
traffic
the atmosphere.
Pollution,
but I'll tell you something else about pollution, because a big piece yesterday in one of the papers about diesel, and we've all been conned. I don't know if you're cars diesel, right? We've all been conned into believing that diesel cars are more economical, because diesel was one time cheaper than petrol. It's now more expensive, and it turns out apparently that diesel is actually worse for the environment than petrol ever was.
It is. I mean, which nutter in the first place, thought that, people should use more diesel and less petrol. For years, haven't we all been standing at bus stops and buses have come along, stopped to let people on and off, chugged out filth from their exhaust, which is all diesel.
Right.
Haven't we, for years, seen lorries coming through town centres chugging out filthy black smoke, which is all diesel? So which nutter suddenly decided, diesel's better than petrol?
It will come as no great surprise to you to know that it was the Green Lobby who said that diesel was actually was greener fuel than petrol, and therefore it would mean that the planet would live longer.
Do you know why they said that? Because, in those days, you could get more miles per gallon out of diesel than you could of petrol, right?
Yeah.
So what they said
Which I think you still can. But the point was, at that time, it was actually cheaper fuel.
But it's now much more expensive. I think it was Gordon Brown who first introduced relief on diesel. So, when petrol sort of went up, as it does annually in the budget, they left diesel alone for a couple of years so that, if, for instance, in those days petrol was £1.20 a gallon, the diesel was only £1.12.
Yeah, well, listen to this. Listen to this. Martin Williams is Professor of Air Quality at King's College London, right? He says, in hindsight, the switch to diesel was a mistake. In the past 20 years, we've had far more toxic emissions from cars than we should have done. And apparently this was all driven by this kind of mania at the time, which is probably about 10 years ago, to reduce carbon dioxide emissions, right? Yeah. Apparently, according to this guy, they forgot that there were other emissions that were actually more dangerous to the atmosphere, apart from carbon dioxide, which diesel emits, which we're now having to suffer.
Well, you see, this is where...
Maybe this holding your breath thing is not such a bad idea.
Yeah, this is where the Green Lobby get it wrong every time. They go by dogma and not by common sense and not by facts and not by scientific data. They just go by dogma, right? So the dogma is diesel's better.
Dogma.
Yeah, diesel dogma. Some nutter told them that, diesel's better. Of course, diesel's filthy. The other situation that's emerged, right, another contrick, is that because cars started changing over to diesel, not enough pumps changed over to diesel at the same time fast enough.
That's true.
So you had massive queues in...
They run out. I was in a garage just the other day, and they had a sign up saying, we apologise for the no diesel.
Absolutely. There's not enough diesel pumps, right? Even though there are more cars now running on diesel and petrol, there's only 1/3 of diesel pumps to petrol pumps.
Yeah.
How about that? Unbelievable. And guess what happens? Crazy people, like, those half-baked sort of people that you see around, start filling their cars with the wrong fuel.
Oh, yeah. I did that once.
You did it?
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
But I did it. But I'll tell you the reason I did it was because I was leasing. It was when I had leased a Mercedes actually, and the leasing company got it wrong, and they issued a tax disc to me instead of to themselves or something like that. So it meant that the tax. What do you mean, huh?
Well,
you're looking at me like some kind of Stone Age man. I was just told this is how fire works.
They give you a tax disc for the wrong car.
No, you know about the thing about a registered keeper. When you lease a car, you're actually not the registered keeper of it. The registered keeper is the leasing company, right? They had sent me the registered keeper papers, so it meant that technically, if I'd wanted to drive off in the car, legally I was within my rights to do that. I didn't have to pay them any money. Right. So there was a big mess up about the whole thing. So as a result of which, the tax disc had to be torn up and sent back. Anyway, as a result, the car wasn't taxed. So they gave me, instead of a Mercedes, believe it or not, some kind of Ford Galaxy to drive around in, right? Which wasn't at all
like a people carrier.
Yeah, it was like a people carrier. Yeah. And they didn't tell me it was diesel. And they came and dropped it off.
What do you mean they didn't tell you it was diesel?
They didn't tell me it was diesel.
So what did you put in it?
I put petrol in it.
You are half-baked.
Well,
you are
I'm
a complete
not.
half-baked. Yes, you are.
They didn't say that it was a diesel car.
When you open the petrol filler cap on any car that's diesel, there's a huge red notice by law which says diesel.
There wasn't on this one.
Oh, yes, there is.
No, not on this car.
There is. It's very difficult to get a petrol nozzle into a diesel
I managed it.
Tank.
I managed it.
But my mate, he filled the whole car up, right?
That's what I did.
Twice, can you believe it? And twice they had to drain and it knackers the engine.
Well,
completely.
I was in Edinburgh at the time, and I drove into town. It was about 4 or 5 mile journey, and as I got closer and closer to town, it started stuttering more and more and more.
This is funny. Tell me what happened.
It just started stuttering more and more, and I'm going, what's wrong with this car?
So you got off the petrol forecourt, did you?
Yeah.
You're driving along merrily.
I'm driving away quite happily, and as I got closer and closer to the city, the car's like going slower and slower and slower, until I finally got...
I can't believe it. It's slowing down. This is a brand new car.
And I'm pressing my foot on the accelerator. What's wrong with this car?
Well, I mean, put more diesel into the... More petrol into a diesel engine.
Rushing it all through.
Yeah, let's wreck the engine completely.
And eventually...
Press that accelerator. Let's get more petrol into the diesel engine.
I managed to get to where I was meant to be, parked it, and then it just literally died. The car died at that very moment. And I rang these people up and I said, look, you give me a dodgy car here. Because I started to think I might have put petrol in. I didn't want to admit to it. Right?
No.
I said, you're going to have to bring me another car. And so they had to actually bring me another car to that exact spot.
Well, you were wise not to admit your mistake, or else they wouldn't have brought you another
And then
car.
they tried to do me for it. They tried to make me pay 250 quid
for wrecking the engine.
Wrecking the engine. I said,
that's quite cheap for
and
wrecking
I said,
the
but
engine.
it wasn't for your cock up on the tax in the first place. I wouldn't even be driving this car. And if you think a Ford Galaxy is in any way a substitute car for a Mercedes, you can go and take a flying leap.
Yeah.
So I didn't give him any money at all.
And did you get away with it?
I did.
Well, you were very lucky. Actually, a mutual friend of ours, who I won't name, but he played for Aston Villa and Middlesbrough, and he captained Ireland 55 times, did exactly the same in a very expensive car.
Does he share a name with a former Who guitarist?
Yes, he does, yeah. Yeah.
That's enough clues, I suppose.
And his nose was used as the model for the front of Concorde. But he did the same with a very expensive car. But... You know, you're on the phone or you're daydreaming or something like that. It starts putting, suddenly,
yeah. Well, that's what happens.
No. But this,
if you're distracted.
Luckily, he only got to about maybe 14 litres or something like that. I went, and then suddenly realised, and I can't remember which way around it was, but he then started putting the right fuel in.
Yeah.
And he just about got away with it by diluting the stuff he'd put in.
Right.
So for about the next...
It's very bad for the engine.
Though, but for about the next 2 weeks, there was a bit of the old,
Well, do you remember the guy
kangaroo
do you remember the guy that did it for Roman Abramovich's yacht? This was a couple of summers ago, and he had his yacht down in...
I think I do.
In the Mediterranean.
$250,000 worth of fuel.
No, well, it was worse than that, because he put all this... He put diesel in instead of petrol, or whichever way round it was, and it was $1 million to actually take it all out and clean the tank out on this £75 million yacht that he keeps down in the
explaining
Mediterranean.
that to Comrade Abramovich.
I would have to say that there's a strong possibility that the man who did that is somewhere in a camp
in Siberia?
in Siberia or something like that.
I would say so.
But of course, we don't know that for sure.
Imagine going up and explaining, excuse me, Mr. Roger.
It's been a slight problem with the yacht.
We can't cast off. Why not? We've got a problem with the fuel. Well, haven't you filled it up with fuel? Yes. What's the problem? It's the wrong fuel. $1 million worth of wrong fuel. My God!
I know.
Just imagine that. You wouldn't last long, would you?
You really wouldn't. Mike Porky Parry and myself, Mike Graham, are going to predict the scores of the football coming up next.
Yeah.
I'm Mike Graham, he is Mike Parry, and I'm afraid to say, Mr. Parry, there's not much chance of either of us winning that sort of money, because our scores from last week are actually even, would you believe, at 4 each, 4 out of 10 each, which is not an incredibly bad result for you, but I'm rather disappointed. My average is normally a bit better than that.
Yeah, I'm taking no notice of your disparaging remarks about my predictability.
It's your unpredictability I'm more worried about, to be honest. Now, let's race through these, because we've got a couple of other things to talk about before we get to the top of the hour. West Ham Tottenham is the first game up.
Yeah, West Ham 1, Tottenham 3.
Yeah, I'm going to go West Ham 0, Tottenham 2. Aston Villa Hull.
2-0 to Aston Villa.
I'm going to go 2-0 to Hull. Man United Sunderland.
Yeah, that's going to be 4-1 to... no, it's not, because Sunderland... right, sorry, correction there. It's going to be 2-1 to Sunderland.
I'm going to say...
2-1 to United, I'm sorry.
For heaven's sake.
I'm going
3-2 to Sunderland, because Conor Wickham's going to score some more goals, I think.
Right.
Newcastle Cardiff. Now, this is the one where Cardiff... Newcastle fans are supposed to be going to be walking out in some kind of demo at the hour mark. What do you make of this one?
Newcastle 1, Cardiff 0. I think Cardiff finished.
Yeah, I think they are too. 1-0's good for me. Stoke City against Fulham.
Yeah, Stoke City 2, Fulham 0. I think Fulham are finished.
Yeah, that's about right for me as well. I'm going 2-1. Swansea Southampton. This is quite a difficult one to call.
Yeah, well, I saw Southampton last weekend. Swansea 1, Southampton 3.
Swansea 1, Southampton 3. I'm going to go 2-2 for that one. And then, of course, the big one, the first live TalkSport commentary game, 5:30 kickoff, Everton and Manchester City.
Yeah, 2-2.
2-2?
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a draw as well, I'm going to go 1-1.
Okay.
Arsenal West Brom.
That'll be Arsenal 4, West Brom 1.
I'm going to go Arsenal 2, West Brom 1.
But West Brom will survive.
Do you think they will?
Yeah.
Well, maybe Norwich are the other team that you think are going to go down.
That's
They're
right.
playing Chelsea. Chelsea at home, they're going to have to get a win after what happened the other night, aren't they?
4-0.
4-0?
Yes.
Without a striker. I'm going to go 2-0. Crystal Palace Liverpool, big game on Monday night, it has to be said.
Yeah, I'm going to go... it's going to shock the world, this. I'm going to go Crystal Palace 2, Liverpool 1.
Right, okay. Well, I mean, there are loads who think that Crystal Palace might beat Liverpool. I'm going to go for a draw there. I'm going to go 1-1 as well.
Yep.
Now, the other games at the bottom of this sheet, I don't think we should do, because that's kind of leading into next week. So those are the 10, aren't they? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, those are the 10. We'll fill the other ones out, and we'll check our predictions later on. Because before I let you go, because you've got to disappear off into that dark night to feed the ducks and make sure that your car tyres are working properly. You were telling me that when things maybe get a little quiet during the summer and there's not any football on, you might find yourself a bit of a new occupation.
Absolutely. I mean, I've just been discovering that 5% of the ding dong Avon calling.
Oh yes,
was that it?
It was Avon. That's right, exactly right.
Ding dong Avon calling. 5% of those representatives now are men.
Are they?
How about that?
What, driving around in pink cars? Because they all drive around in pink cars, don't they?
No, of course they don't.
Yes, they do.
Rubbish.
Don't they?
Rubbish. They work from home and they just take their own car.
I saw some. I'm sure it was a Avon lady that was
rubbish.
driving.
No,
maybe it was an Ann Summers. They do Ann Summers party cars, I think. Maybe that was it.
Do they?
Yeah.
It's a bit risque, isn't it?
Yeah. There was somebody used to live in my street who had a pink car, and I thought it was an Avon car. But maybe
no, that's not an Avon car. Anyway, so I thought, that's quite a good way to, to get into the male sort of grooming type, but it's not. These men actually sell ladies' cosmetics only to ladies.
Right.
But,
so they just go cold calling,
they go
ringing women's doors.
I think that's what Avon representatives do, but I've read a bit into this, and apparently some of these Avon people, if they're smart enough and good enough and energetic enough, can earn $100,000 a year.
Really?
Apparently. I mean,
isn't it a bit like one of those kind of, I don't want to call it a pyramid scheme, but is it not about how many other people you sign up to do it, as opposed to how many things you sell?
I think there is, and there's nothing pyramid about it. You become a team leader, and I think you have other people who are doing it as well, and, because you've motivated them and set it up, you take a percentage of what they sell and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But apparently, I mean, and the great thing is, of course, mate, you work in your own time. So maybe you and I could get together, become team leaders for Avon.
What?
Okay, yeah, why not? Why not?
No, I'm not doing that.
Why not?
Because I don't believe... I'm not a salesman. I've never been a salesman. I don't wish to be a salesman.
Well, I must admit, you couldn't sell, fish to starving sea lions because you just have no gravitas whatsoever in terms of, the trust.
Maybe that would be a better job for your zookeeper.
The trust factor that you need to become a salesman.
Well, no, I think people who are salesmen, I have great admiration for them. They do very well. There's always been people in our business, either in radio or in newspapers where I've worked all my life. And, but they're a certain kind of person. You have to be a certain kind of person to be a salesman. You have to be, constantly optimistic. You have to be, slightly false. I don't mean to say that in a bad way.
Yeah.
But you have to present this kind of, persona that people will trust. And ostensibly, people, that people don't really trust you anyway.
Well, also, you've got to look the part. You've got to look good, dapper, well-suited.
Well, that's
you're not.
That's your job out the window.
No, mate, you're not. Your hair looks like you're a reconstituted hippie from 1960.
I can look
your
very
clothes
dapper.
look as though they were bought at Oxfam.
Well, my clothes were not bought at Oxfam.
Your
my
demeanour,
clothes were actually very expensive.
Your demeanour is that of a man who sticks 3 or 4 hamburgers down his throat a day, so you wouldn't give over any sense of confidence to anybody you're trying to sell anything to, okay?
And your point is?
My point is...
How are you any different from that man you just described?
Well, because I have a sense of sophistication about me, and also I know about selling. Selling is
What was the last thing you sold?
Apart
from your soul.
Well, let me tell you this. No, I'm not going to react to that.
Go on.
When I was about 13,
right. That was about 50 years ago.
I supported the school. No, it's ridiculous.
You were still in pounds, shillings, and pence.
I supported the school at the head of the river race on the River Dee in Chester. It was a huge day of fundraising as well as a rowing
was this
event.
when you were rowing?
No, I wasn't rowing. I went there to support the school because I'm a decent chap. And
your legs are too short for rowing, anyway.
My job was to sell programmes on the riverbank. I sold a record number of programmes that day and got
that's not really
I
selling,
got a citation from the headmaster to say what a brilliant job I'd done. I raised so much money for charity. And I used to go up to people and I say, look, have a programme. Without a programme, you can't understand what's going on the water. Come on, buy a programme here. I said, there's a number in the back for the free raffle. There was no number in the back for the free raffle.
So you were conning them?
Well, I successfully managed to persuade them to buy these programmes.
You see, the problem for you is that you think in order to build a business of sales, you need to be able to have people want to come back to you and buy something else from you.
Absolutely.
By the way that you did that, they wouldn't want to buy one off you the next year because you misled them.
They wouldn't remember me the next year, so it'd be different people as well. And I'd have grown up a bit.
You're going to shave the beard off, I suppose.
No, I just said it wasn't me. It was that rascal.
You see, the trouble is you lead your life in a way which is incredibly deceptive.
Really?
Just like when you cheated at the Shakespeare test. Hey, by the way, did you see that story about Titus Andronicus? The performance of it at the Globe Theatre the other night was so gory that people were actually fainting in the aisles.
Terribly violent.
Take people off to hospital.
Terribly violent, isn't it?
Shocking. But anyway, but the point is your kind of whole persona is based on deceit.
No, it's not.
And you doing people over.
No, I resent that.
That is not the way to build a business.
I terribly resent that.
And I would never go into business with you because I wouldn't want to be associated with you.
Well, I wouldn't go into business with you because as far as I'm concerned, you've got one word printed on your forehead. Failure. That's what you are. Right? You got it?
I'm surprised you can read from
You're
that
a failure,
far away.
man. You're a failure. You
Thank you
failed in
very
everything
much.
you've done. You failed as a father. You failed as a family man. You failed in your ability to crack Fleet Street, and in the end you had to sort of scamper away and get into the broadcasting world, which you're in now. And let's face it, Mike, we can't say that you're the world's greatest success in this business. By the way, I've got to go now, folks. Don't forget even. What's my social network address?
I can't remember it. I'm not giving it out now.
At Mike Parry 8. And you are?
I am IRMG. Of course, at TS Extra Time as well. We are the two Mikes. He's Mike Parry. He'll be back on Monday night after a successful weekend, no doubt, selling snow to the Eskimos.